Chapter 23:13. If the Tian Empire really chooses to engage in a battle to the death with us regardless of the casualties, the Tian Empire will definitely pay an unimaginable price, even if we lose in the end. Even if they emerge victorious, they'll be heavily injured, Zhou Zhidao said with a heavy voice. That's right. The Tian Empire cannot afford to engage in a battle to the death with us. All we can do right now is cast down layers of formations in the northern region and make it impregnable. It'll become our fortress against the Tian Empire. Since we've chosen the northern region as our final line of defense, we should completely deal with the Shi clan in the northern region. Since the Shi dynasty has chosen to stand with the Tian Empire of the central region, there's indeed no need for them to continue existing in the northern region. The ancestral figures of the various peak organizations all spoke out. As soon as they mentioned the Shi Empire, they were extremely cold. Peak Lord, may I ask why the great elder of the heavenly demon religion still hasn't taken action? At this moment, the ancestor of the fire god clan, Lian Wuji, looked at the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, who had remained silent the entire time. Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, when the heavenless demon Exalt killed the grand elder of the heavenly demon religion, you swore that the heavenless demon Exalt's fate was set in stone, that he would die to the great elder behind the heavenly demon religion. However, so many days have passed now, so why hasn't there been a single sign of the great elder of the heavenly demon religion? First, the heavenly demon religion's great elder and one of the 5 generals, the war demon, were personally killed by the heavenless demon Exalt. Afterwards, the heavenless demon Exalt destroyed the branch of the heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane. Even 2 of the 3 vice leaders died. The last one even abandoned the heavenly demon religion and submitted to the heavenless demon Exalt. Logically speaking, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion should have appeared after such a major matter. Don't tell me the great elder of the heavenly demon religion fears the heavenless demon Exalt and is unwilling to become his enemy. The ancestors of the peak organizations all spoke out. At that moment, many of them began to doubt the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. As a matter of fact, there were some people who were certain that the great elder of the heavenly demon religion did not have the confidence to defeat the heavenless demon Exalt, who had become a 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime. After all, everyone present, including the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, still relied on the great elder to deal with the heavenless demon Exalt. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak shook his head gently when he heard the doubts of these people. He said, I don't know the exact reason why the great elder of the heavenly demon religion still hasn't taken action, but the great elder's strength is unquestionable. His strength has completely exceeded your imaginations. Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, how can you be so certain that the great elder of the heavenly demon religion is really that terrifying? Peak Lord, have you personally seen a great elder of the Empyrean demon cult take action? He Dao asked. Everyone present had only heard rumors about the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. They knew that the great elder of the heavenly demon religion had once killed the lord of the planet and fended off a hall elder of the god race without suffering defeat. Strength like that was indeed enough to make many peak clans on the cloud plane fear him. This was because all the peak experts on the cloud plane were early grand primes before the heavenless demon Exalt broke through. However, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion was still an extremely mysterious figure in their eyes. No one had personally seen him, let alone how the great elder of the heavenly demon religion took action. That's right. I have indeed personally seen the great elder of the heavenly demon religion take action. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak nodded. He could not help but think about what he had seen in the past, and deep fear appeared on his face, which was extremely rare. All the ancestors present perked up their ears as well. They all looked at the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. In the past, when I passed by the Godnigma plane of the God race, I just happened to come across the battle between the heavenly demon religion and the experts of the God race in outer space. Everyone in the Saints' world knew that the heavenly demon religion had clashed with a hall elder of the God race in the past, but no victor emerged. The matter was left unsettled. However, very few people actually knew that there was indeed only a single Hall Elder among the experts who clashed with the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon religion. But in reality, two of the three Great Elders of the God race had secretly taken action. They engaged in a battle of souls with the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon religion from afar. In that battle, the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon religion fought against three people alone, but no victor emerged. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's words immediately silenced everyone present. In the God race, basically all Hall Elders were early Grand Primes, while Great Elders were mid-Grand Primes or even late Grand Primes. However, the Great Elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult was actually able to fight to a draw against a Hall Elder and two Great Elders from the God Clan. This strength deeply shocked all of them. Since the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon religion is so powerful, why hasn't he appeared yet? Luo Mantion sucked in a deep breath and asked in confusion. Just when he was about to say something, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He looked at the sky, and he became extremely stern. He murmured, "He's here." At the same time, all the peak experts gathered there raised their heads, as if they sensed something. They stared at the sky in shock. The scorching sun in the sky of the northern region had already vanished. A boundless, demonic cloud silently arrived, blotting out the sky and isolating the sun and moon. It caused the entire northern region to sink into darkness. The ancestral emperor of the Shi dynasty, Shi Lianxue, stood within a majestic hall within the imperial palace of the Tian Empire in the central region of the Cloud Plain. Before Shi Lianxue, the heavenless demon Exalt sat on a throne like a king. Vaguely, an extremely powerful presence leaked out from him from time to time, causing the space around him to distort in an extremely unstable manner. Shi Lianxue reported everything that had happened in the Shi dynasty to the heavenless demon Exalt without hiding anything at all. After hearing that, the black mist around the heavenless demon Exalt immediately surged as heavy killing intent radiated from him. Just when he was about to say something, his body suddenly shuddered, and in the next moment, he vanished from his throne. When he reappeared, he was above the imperial palace of the Tian Empire, looking at the sky. The scorching sun in the sky had already vanished. An extremely terrifying, demonic cloud silently appeared, enveloping the entire sky. It caused the entire central region to sink into darkness in a single moment. If someone was in the outer space of the cloud plane right now, they would discover that not only were the central and northern regions enveloped by demonic aura, but even the eastern, western, and southern regions were shrouded by demonic aura. Chapter 23:14. Two more old men silently appeared beside the heavenless demon Exalt above the majestic imperial palace of the Tian Empire of the central region. The three of them were the foundation of the Tian Empire. They were the spiritual pillars of the empire. At the same time, they were what allowed the Tian Empire to become the only everlasting empire on the Cloud Plain. However, the two old men were much weaker than the heavenless demon Exalt. They were first heavenly layer and second heavenly layer grand primes, respectively. What shocking demonic aura! Who is this expert? Is he a great elder of the heavenly demon religion? The two old men from the Tian Empire looked at the sky together. Shock filled their eyes as they became extremely stern. In the face of this monstrous, demonic aura, even with their terrifying cultivation, which could be considered to be at the peak of the cloud plane, they still felt waves of pressure. A great elder of the heavenly demon religion? The heavenless demon Exalt murmured before sneering, "He's finally appeared. I've been waiting for him for quite some time now. Today, I'd like to see whether the great elder who killed the planet lord and dared to fight against a Hall Elder of the God Clan is as powerful as the rumors say. I hope he doesn't disappoint me." The two other Grand Primes from the Tian Empire calmed down when they heard that. One of them said sternly, "Heavenless will be relying on you to stop the great elder of the heavenly demon religion." The heavenless demon Exalt nodded slightly. At the same time, a terrifying presence radiated from him. Demonic aura also surged out from his surroundings as he sneered. I'll go deal with the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. Be vigilant. Be wary of the people from the heavens link peak, choosing this moment to launch a sneak attack. With that, the heavenless demon Exalt surged with demonic aura and shot into the sky with a shocking presence. He charged towards the huge demonic cloud that enveloped the entire cloud plane. At that moment, the heavenless demon Exalt's strength as a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime was truly on display. The energy that condensed around him caused the surrounding space to collapse. His presence was so powerful that the ground below rapidly sank. The Tian Empire had already activated their protective formations as soon as possible. A powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire territory of the Tian Empire. Within this formation, there was a second formation and a third formation at the same time. The second formation enveloped the huge imperial capital of the Tian Empire, while the third formation enveloped the imperial palace. Each of the three formations was more powerful than the last. Every single formation had been personally cast down by a Grand Prime of the Tian Empire, so their defenses were extremely shocking. The heavenless demon Exalt is about to clash with the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. All the experts gathered outside the God's Fallen clan in the northern region of the cloud plane hovered in the pitch-black sky as they stared in the direction of the central region. They were all supreme experts of the cloud plane. Even though the northern region was very far away from the central region, the powerful senses of their souls could easily envelop the imperial palace of the Tian Empire. Ming Dong, who was also in the northern region, hovered in the sky under the protection of Uncle Ming. He stared in the direction of the central region sternly. Beside Ming Dong, the empress of the Shi Empire, the holy emperor Shi Haoshuan, and Shi Haoming all became rather pale. The three of them stared at the huge demonic cloud that blotted out the sky as they shuddered from the bottom of their hearts. Suddenly, the demonic cloud that enveloped the entire sky began to surge violently. A huge hand, completely condensed from demonic chi, abruptly extended from the demonic cloud and pressed down with a terrifying might that could destroy the world. The hand was truly extremely huge. It was 1,000,000 kilometers long, and it seemed like a small continent. It enveloped the entire Tian Empire. The heavenless demon Exalt led the way. He launched a shocking strike with the terrifying might of a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime, colliding with the hand loudly. Suddenly, the void collapsed and the firmament shattered. The entire world seemed to be divided. The power of the collision this time was terrifying and shocking, causing the entire central region to tremble violently. A terrifying earthquake occurred, tsunami struck the sky, the continent shifted, and countless mountains and rivers were shattered. A strike from Grand Prime was nothing to be scoffed at. If it were not for the formations of the Tian Empire, the entire empire would have been flattened by the shock waves of energy. However, not only did the heavenless demon Exalt's fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime fail to shatter the hand condensed from demonic aura, but it did not weaken at all. It continued to fall from the sky in an unstoppable manner. As for the heavenless demon Exalted, he was directly below the palm. When the palm descended, his body was actually pressed to the ground. Oh no! The hearts of the two other Grand Primes from the Tian Empire sank when they saw this. They immediately flew over and worked with the heavenless demon Exalt to fend off the huge hand of demonic aura. However, even when the three of them worked together, they were unable to stop the hand from falling. In the end, with a great rumble, the hand of demonic aura suppressed the three Grand Primes along the way, shattering the three formations around the Tian Empire one after another. It landed on the imperial capital of the Tian Empire like a hot knife through butter. Immediately, the entire 5 regions of the Cloud region shook violently. The Cloud region, which was originally motionless in the air, began to move as the palm fell. The power of the hand had actually shifted the cloud plane's position in the air. In the central region, the majestic imperial capital of the Tian Empire had already vanished. Even the resplendent imperial palace of the Tian Empire had vanished. A huge, bottomless hand had replaced the ground of the imperial capital. All the people who moved about in the imperial capital, including the many experts of the Tian Empire, had been reduced to ashes by the hand. The only people who survived from the palm strike were the heavenless demon Exalt, the 3 Grand Primes, and the 2 weak lives trapped in a hall. The hall was destroyed, but they were unscathed. The 3 Grand Primes had all been pressed into the ground by the hand. Their faces were pale, and blood flowed from the corner of their lips. Clearly, they were quite injured. The 2 other weak beings who were unharmed were naturally Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who the heavenless demon Exalt had captured. At this moment, Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling were enveloped by demonic aura as they hovered in the air. Below their feet was not the ground, but a bottomless chasm that had been created by a palm strike. However, the 2 of them were already below the horizon. The golden-robed Xiao Jin was enveloped by the demonic aura as he looked around in shock. His face was filled with horror. What's going on? Xiao Jin was completely stunned as he looked at the bottomless chasm below him. However, Xiaoling was not thinking about what had happened at all. She could clearly sense an extremely familiar presence that she missed, which made her eyes redden immediately. Tears flowed uncontrollably as she looked at the darkness around her helplessly. She sobbed, "Master, Master, where are you? Xiaoling knows you're here. Where are you?" Xiaoling is so scared. Don't abandon Xiaoling. Xiaoling was like a child who had been wronged. She began to bawl loudly. Her cries were very sad, and there was a strong sense of longing that could not be concealed within them. "Xiaoling, don't be afraid. Master has come to take you back. From today onwards, no one will be able to bully you anymore." At this moment, a gentle voice rang out. A black-robed, middle-aged man silently appeared before Xiaoling. No one knew when he had appeared, as if he had been standing there the entire time. He had fused with the demonic aura in the surroundings, so no one could discover him. There was a strong sense of doting love in his eyes as he looked at Xiaoling, just like how a father would look at his own daughter. There was also a faint hint of heartache in his eyes. Chapter 23:15. At the same time, all the Grand Primes gathered outside the God's Fallen clan in the distant northern region stared in the direction of the Tian Empire in shock. Their faces were filled with shock. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion is actually so terrifying. With just a single strike, he destroyed the imperial capital of the Tian Empire. It's too terrifying. It's just too terrifying. Even when the heavenless demon Exalt and the 2 other Grand Primes of the Tian Empire worked together, they were unable to stop the destruction of the imperial capital. The Tian Empire is done for. No one can save them now that they've offended such a terrifying figure. The heavenless demon Exalt only has himself to blame. Of all the people he could have offended, he just had to offend the heavenly demon religion. The peak experts who stood at the apex of the plane discussed outside the God's Fallen clan. In particular, when they saw the arrogant heavenless demon Exalt end up like this. All of them took pleasure in his misfortune. They also felt some joy. They felt fortunate that they had not chosen to become enemies with the heavenly demon religion, where the consequences would have been unimaginable. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stood with his arms behind his back. His eyes were extremely deep as he stared in the direction of the central region. He said slowly, "The heavenless demon Exalt has become a 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime, reaching mid-Grand Prime. He's become the strongest on the cloud plane, so his confidence swelled. He deduced that he was no weaker than the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion from the battle achievements of the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion. But in the end, he still underestimated the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion. The Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion is powerful beyond my imagination. He can actually shift the position of the cloud plane with a single palm strike. I even suspect that the Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion might not have used his full strength when he fought against the 3 experts of the God Clan. What terrifying strength! If I've guessed correctly, this person should be the Empyrean Demon Lord that Commander Yin mentioned. In the air above the ruins of the Shi dynasty, the white-robed Uncle Ming stared at the central region without blinking as he said sternly, "The Empyrean Demon Lord?" Ming Dong murmured. He looked at Uncle Ming with some interest. Uncle Ming said sternly, "The Empyrean Demon Lord is actually the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion is a rather mysterious figure in the saints' world. He rarely shows himself, and he rarely comes into contact with other experts of the same level. As a result, in the eyes of many people, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion is extremely mysterious. His identity in the saints' world has always been the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. As for the title of Empyrean Demon Lord, it was given to him by a few experts of the saints' world after his battle against a Hall Elder and two great elders on the God Nigma plane of the God Clan. As a result, he gained the title of Empyrean Demon Lord, which is why very few people in the saints' world know about him." Uncle Ming paused there before continuing. "The Empyrean Demon Lord is an extremely terrifying figure. I once heard from Commander Yin that over 100,000 years ago, Commander Yin fought against the great elder of the heavenly demon religion in outer space. Back then, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion was on par with Commander Yin. They were both 6th heavenly layer grand primes." Uncle Ming looked at Ming Dong and said, "Ninth Majesty, who do you think emerged victorious in the battle between Commander Yin and the great elder of the heavenly demon religion?" "Of course it's Uncle Yin. I heard from my senior sister that Uncle Yin practices a cultivation method personally created by Master. Even his battle skills came from my master. Across the entire Saints world, there's probably no one who can defeat Uncle Yin at the same level of cultivation. At most, they'll only be able to tie with Uncle Yin," Ming Dong said confidently. He knew extremely well that every single divine general of the heavenly palace of Bishing had been carefully selected. Every single one of them was an elite among elites, a prodigy among prodigies. With such great talent as a foundation and the careful nurturing of the heavenly palace of Bishing, these divine generals were able to challenge those at higher levels of cultivation. They were invincible among the same level of cultivation. If they were in the divine king realm, they would definitely be supreme divine kings. If they were in the primordial realm, they would also be prodigies among the primordial realm. As for Commander Yin, he was one of the best among all the divine generals. He possessed powerful cultivation methods and battle skills, as well as various wondrous secret techniques. As a result, Commander Yin was so powerful that he would not be much weaker than the direct disciples of Grand Exalts. His only disadvantage was that he did not possess the right to use the laws of the Grand Exalt. How could such a peerless figure lose in a fair one-on-one battle? However, Uncle Ming shook his head gently after hearing Ming Dong's confident words. He let out a long sigh. Commander Yin lost that battle. What? Uncle Yin actually lost? Ming Dong was shocked when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face. Even Yun Xiaoyan, who was familiar with Commander Yan's abilities, opened her mouth slightly when she heard that. She was shocked. Commander Yin of the heavenly palace of Bishing was a godlike figure in the saints' world. He had created invincible legends one after another. He had never encountered an opponent at the same level of cultivation as him, nor had he ever suffered defeat. Even the ancestral emperor of their 1,000 Lotus Empire showed great respect towards Commander Yin. That's right, Commander Yin has indeed lost. Commander Yin personally told me that. He accepts his loss wholeheartedly. Moreover, he asserts that even if a direct disciple of a Grand Exalt encounters the Empyrean Demon Lord, they will only be defeated if they don't use the laws of the Grand Exalt. Ninth Majesty, do you understand just how powerful the Empyrean Demon Lord is now? Uncle Ming said sternly. Ming Dong sucked in a deep breath. His gaze towards the demonic cloud in the sky changed as well. Only Ming Dong, Yun Xiaoyan, and Uncle Ming could hear their conversation. As for the Empress, Shi Yu, and the great holy emperor of the Shi Empire, they could not hear anything at all due to Uncle Ming's interference. Uncle Ming, let's return to the Tianyuan family. The matters here have nothing to do with us anymore, said Ming Dong. The black-robed man gently hugged Xiao Ling and said gently, Xiao Ling, they bullied you. Now, Master will take revenge for you. Xiao Ling, they've bullied you. Master will take revenge for you right now. Xiaoling nodded and said gently. As he said that, the black-robed man clenched his hand gently. At the bottom of the chasm, the heavily injured heavenless demon Exalt and the two other Grand Primes of the Tian Empire slowly floated up under the restraints of pure demonic aura. They arrived before the black-robed man, and Xiaoling immediately became afraid when she saw the heavenless demon Exalt. She immediately hid behind the black-robed man and poked her head out to stare at the heavenless demon Exalt viciously. She said fearfully, "Master, it's him. It's that bad guy. He's so terrifying. He bullied Xiaoling and even said that he would cut Xiaoling to pieces." Sob, sob, sob. Towards the end, Xiaoling seemed to remember the threat she had received when she had just ended up in the heavenless demon Exalt's hands. She immediately began to sob sorrowfully again. "Cut him to pieces? Good, very good," the black-robed man growled. His gaze became extremely sharp as killing intent surged. "Who are you? It's impossible for a great elder of the heavenly demon religion to possess your strength." At this moment, the heavenless demon Exalt struggled under the black-robed man's restraints. He glared at the black-robed man and roared out reluctantly. However, in the depths of his eyes, there was a wisp of unconcealable terror. The strength of the black-robed man before him was so strong that it caused him to feel terrified, and it caused him to feel powerless from the bottom of his heart. Only now did he suddenly realize that he was actually so weak as a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime. "I'm the great elder of the heavenly demon religion," said the black-robed man. The black-robed man said. Immediately, he spread his finger, and waves of killing force gathered. They formed many invisible blades that rapidly rotated around the heavenless demon Exalt. Immediately, droplets of demonic blood that pulsed with powerful energy rained down. The heavenless demon Exalt was riddled with wounds in a single instance. His flesh and blood flew everywhere. He had actually been cut off piece by piece. It was as if the heavenless demon Exalt had threatened Xiaoling in the past. He wanted to cut her to pieces, except he was the one being cut to pieces. "Impossible! This is impossible!" The heavenless demon Exalt bellowed out furiously. He began to struggle as hard as he could, as if he wanted to break free. He was a mighty fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime, yet he was bound here and cut to pieces right now. To the heavenless demon Exalt, this was even worse than death. After all Grand Primes had their dignity. However, the restraints completely condensed from demonic aura around him were far more powerful than he had imagined. Even with his strength, he was unable to break free. It went without saying for the other two experts of the Tian Empire. All they could do was watch helplessly as the heavenless demon Exalt they relied on the most was tortured in a humiliating manner. Xiaoling had already hidden her little head. She could not bear to watch this bloody scene. "My heavenly demon chains are not as simple as a strand of pure demonic aura. Instead, they're condensed from the essence of the six worlds over a very long period of time. They're as powerful as high-quality god artifacts. So you better stop wasting your efforts," said the black-robed man coldly. The blades formed from the force of slaughter under his control moved faster and faster. In just under a minute, the heavenless demon Exalt had been cut to pieces, reducing his entire body to a pile of white bones. Even his head was no exception. It had become a skull, and only a shining ball of primordial spirit remained. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion looked at the heavenless demon Exalt's soul, and his eyes flickered with a strange light. Noticing his gaze, the heavenless demon Exalt seemed to realize something. Suddenly, he shivered as great fear filled his heart. He communicated with his soul in a hurry. "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'll submit to you. I'm willing to become your servant and listen to your orders in the future. P.S. Many of you must already know that the Empyrean Demon Lord is Mo Tianyun. Xiaoyao has already posted a picture of Mo Tianyun on his public account. If you want to see Mo Tianyun's brothers, please follow Xiaoyao's public account on WeChat, XingXingXiao110. Or you can directly search for the pen name Xinxing Xiaoyao on WeChat. Chapter 23:16. You want to yield to me? The black-robed man stared at the dazzling soul of the heavenless demon exalt as a mocking smile appeared on his face. That's right. I'm willing to yield to you and become your subordinate. I'll work for you wholeheartedly. The heavenless demon exalt said hurriedly. He used his soul to communicate with the two other grand primes of the Tian Empire so that they could hear him clearly. Immediately, the faces of the two grand primes darkened. They became dispirited. The heavenly demon religion. The heavenly demon religion. The reason why our Tian Empire has ended up like this is all because we've offended the heavenly demon religion. Heavenless, you've harmed our entire Tian Empire. Sigh, if I had known earlier, we would have stopped you with everything we had when you wanted to move against the heavenly demon religion. The two grand primes were filled with regret. However, they also understood that they could not change anything no matter how much they regretted. This was because the Tian Empire was done for. Almost all of the core and upper echelon of the Tian Empire had gathered in the imperial palace to await orders. In the end, all of them had been obliterated by that terrifying palm strike. According to my knowledge, there are no other grand primes in the heavenly demon religion apart from you. I'm a fourth heavenly layer grand prime, so once I join, the heavenly demon religion will basically be like a tiger that has grown wings. The heavenless demon exalt followed up. He was basically willing to do anything for survival. This was because he understood extremely well that if he did not do that, what awaited him would be an outcome even more terrifying than death. You're right. There are indeed no other grand primes in the heavenly demon religion apart from me, the black-robed man said gently. However, his gaze towards the heavenless demon exalt remained cold. The heavenless demon exalt let out a sigh of relief. However, just when he thought the great elder of the heavenly demon religion was going to accept him, the great elder's next words immediately sent the heavenless demon exalt back to hell. Unfortunately, I don't need it. With that, the heavenless demon exalt's head immediately exploded. A hand wrapped in demonic aura directly shattered his head and grabbed his soul in an extremely rough manner. No, the heavenless demon exalt screamed miserably, but only lasted for a split second before coming to a sudden stop. His soul had vanished in the hands of the great elder of the heavenly demon religion, having been put away. Afterwards, the great elder of the heavenly demon religion looked at the two other grand primes of the Tian Empire. The destruction of the heavenly demon religion and the capture of this girl were all done by Wu Tian alone. It has nothing to do with us. A grand prime from the Tian Empire sighed gently. His eyes were gloomy, and his face was ashen. The great elder of the heavenly demon religion said nothing. His eyes were cold and emotionless. He directly reached out and removed the two resplendent souls. Without their souls, the two grand primes of the Tian Empire immediately fell powerlessly. Their powerful presences rapidly weakened as well. In just a while, their presences completely vanished from the surroundings. The heavenless demon Exalt is dead. The other two people of the Tian Empire are dead as well. An eternal empire has been reduced to dust with a flick of a finger. The peak experts gathered outside the God's Fallen clan all sighed emotionally. Every single one of them had extremely mixed feelings. In the past few days, the Tian Empire had pressured them to the point of suffocation. Yet now, such a powerful, everlasting empire had rapidly declined from its peak state in such a short amount of time, dispersing into nothingness. The huge change had an extremely heavy impact on all of them. Pass down the order for everyone to move out immediately. Head to the central region to kill the remnants of the Tian Empire. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak quickly descended before looking at the peak experts beside him. He said sternly, "Everyone, let's wait here and see the great elder of the heavenly demon religion." All the peak experts gathered there were shocked when they heard that. Someone immediately cried out, "What did you say? The great elder of the heavenly demon religion wants to come here?" At that moment, all of their expressions changed. Before they had seen the great elder of the heavenly demon religion personally take action, they only felt some fear towards the great elder of the heavenly demon religion. However, They were now filled with fear and unease. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak nodded. He looked in the direction of the God's Fallen clan and said, "Invite Houston out." The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's voice directly rang out in the depths of the God's Fallen clan to a quiet courtyard specially prepared for the Heavens Link Peak. In the Dong, and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region, Siyu stood on the roof of the Tianyuan family in white robes. He stared at the churning demonic clouds that enveloped the entire sky in shock. Whether it was the Tianyuan family, the divine kingdom of Pingtian, or the entire southern region, it was completely dark due to the demonic clouds. Lanterns had already been lit in the Tianyuan family and the streets of the provincial city. They used the weak light to disperse the surrounding darkness and provide some light. So powerful, Siyu thought. He was extremely shocked. Siyu, the Tiger Emperor, you should become stronger through slaughter. You should grow under the baptism of the endless blood of your enemies. You shouldn't be like you right now, cultivating slowly through peaceful days. You'll only be a flower in a greenhouse in the end. You won't be able to hold up the sky. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind Siyu. The sudden voice alarmed Sacred Feather. He abruptly returned to his senses and saw a black-robed man silently appear behind him. His black clothes fused with the surrounding darkness, as if he had fused with the surroundings. Siyu immediately took a few steps back. He raised his head and looked at the formation that enveloped the entire Tianyuan family. He cried out, "How did you get in here? This formation can indeed stop chaotic primes, but it can't stop me," the black-robed man said indifferently. At this moment, Siyu's gaze pierced through the darkness. He finally saw the black-robed man's face, which immediately shocked him. Siyu stared at the black-robed man with wide eyes. Disbelief filled his face. "You must have guessed my true identity long ago." "That's right. All your guesses are correct," said the black-robed man. "Then how should I address you?" Siyu calmed down very quickly and asked with mixed feelings. "Mo Tianyan. That's my real name, not an alias," said the black-robed man. Afterwards, his gaze suddenly sharpened. He stared closely at Siyu and said in an extremely stern voice, "We, Siyu the Tiger Emperor, have one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world. We're close to the ancestral dragon, and the power of the bloodline and infinite potential hidden within us can only be completely awakened through the tempering of life and death over and over again, traversing mountains of corpses and seas of blood, baptizing in the endless blood of our enemies. Staying in the Tianyuan family like this without going through battles of life and death is completely detrimental to you. In the end, you'll just waste the power of your bloodline." Mo Tianyan's words were forceful. He was educating a junior like a senior. Siyu felt ashamed from the scolding. He said, "I know. I'm only staying here to wait for my brother to return." "Your brother?" Mo Tianyan was surprised, but his gaze became extremely deep soon afterwards. Strands of divination flashed through his eyes. In a single instance, he knew who Siyu's brother was. He said, "Jinshin is fine right now. You don't need to worry about him. You should walk your own path now. We, the Tiger Emperors of Siyu, should be from the Immortals world. We don't belong to the Saints world. We'll kill our way back to the Immortals world sooner or later and take revenge. At that time, you should be able to protect yourself," said Mo Tianyan. As soon as revenge was mentioned, he struggled to maintain his composure. His emotions fluctuated slightly. Afterwards, he took out a talisman and passed it to Siyu. He said, "This teleportation talisman will send you to a certain place before guiding you to a damaged world. That's a ruin from the spirit's world. The environment there is extremely horrible, and danger lurks everywhere. If you're careless, you'll be in danger of dying. However, danger always comes with opportunity. It's quite a good place for you to train. Once you're ready, go. Many primordial realm experts have died there. Once you go, I won't provide you with any assistance. You'll have to rely on yourself for everything. Don't disgrace the bloodline of the Tiger Emperors of Siu." Mo Tianyan vanished silently after leaving behind the talisman. He came and went without a trace. The formation around the Tianyuan family was nothing to him. The peak experts who stood at the apex of the plane all stood outside the God's Fallen clan in the northern region and waited silently. Many of them were filled with nervousness. To no surprise, the blood-robed Houston was among them as well. He stood beside the Lord of the Heavens Link, Peak, quietly. At this moment, a black-robed figure who seemed to have completely fused into the darkness appeared outside the God's Fallen clan silently. He stood with his arms behind his back, 100 meters away from the peak experts of the God's Fallen clan. He was Mo Tianyan. His arrival immediately caused the pupils of these peak experts to shrink, and their expressions became extremely solemn. "You've finally come." The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stared at the figure who had fused into the darkness as he said sternly. Mo Tianyan did not look at the peak experts gathered there. Instead, he stared at Houston, who stood beside the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. His emotions fluctuated violently, and undisguised excitement and eagerness appeared in the depths of his eyes. However, he soon calmed down. Only then did his gaze land on the white-robed, fairy-like, white-haired peak master of Heaven's Link Peak who stood at the very front. He said, "Thank you for taking care of him all these years." The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak sucked in a deep breath and said slowly, "I saved him in the past for the sake of the entire Cloud Plain. I couldn't bear to see the people of the Cloud Plain suffer." Chapter 23:17. Over a dozen men and women of various ages hovered in the air outside the Cloud Plain. All of them stared at the terrifying demonic cloud that enveloped the entire Cloud Plain as undisguised excitement filled their faces. They also felt admiration and respect from the bottom of their hearts. These people were all members of the upper echelon of the Empyrean demon cult. Aside from the Grand Elder, the other 7 elders had all arrived. They all radiated with the presences of primordial realm experts. Aside from the 7 elders, there were 4 extraordinarily large and burly men. They wore black clothes and stood with their arms by their sides. They were cold as they stood to one side emotionlessly. These 4 men all had sharp gazes. Killing intent was shooting out from their eyes, and their bodies were emitting a dense smell of blood. The powerful auras emitted from their bodies were clearly much more powerful than the 7 great elders. It was so much so that some of the 7 great elders were looking at the 4 men with gazes that contained a hidden fear. This was because the 4 men were the remaining 4 generals of the heavenly demon religion. However, regardless of whether it was the 7 great elders or the 4 great battle generals, all of them were silently floating in the air at this moment. It was as if they were waiting for something. At this moment, a powerful demonic aura suddenly appeared before the 7 elders and the 4 generals. Through the surging demonic aura, they seemed to be able to see a hazy figure enveloped by the demonic aura. Greetings to the great elder. The appearance of the demonic aura immediately made all the members of the upper echelon of the Empyrean demon cult bow politely. "Great Elder, not only has a branch of our religion been destroyed in the Cloud Plain, but even the Grand Elder has been heavily injured, almost dying. The War Demon has been slain as well. This grievance is absolutely irreconcilable. Please give us the order to wash the Cloud Plain in blood, Great Elder. Please give us the order to wash the Cloud Plain in blood, Great Elder," the 4 generals said together. Killing intent surged as they all gave off an extremely heavy smell of blood. The 5 generals were as close as brothers, like they had been through life and death together. Now that one of them had died, the 4 generals naturally became filled with hatred. "I've already killed the heavenless demon Exalt, and the Tian Empire only exists in name. The matter of the Cloud Plain ends here," said the Great Elder in a demonic aura, as if his words were an imperial edict, the will of the world. There was no room for objection. "We obey the Grand Supreme Elder's order," the 4 generals replied politely. They could only obey the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. They could not question him at all. Even though they were extremely unwilling to accept this, they dared not say a single extra word. Great Elder, one of the 3 vice leaders of the branch on the Cloud Plain, Huayan, has betrayed the heavenly demon religion. I can sense that Huayan is still alive through a secret technique. Please give us the order to capture Huayan, Great Elder. A woman in black armor said politely from behind the seven elders. This woman had a peerless appearance that could cause the downfall of countries and people. As she spoke, she revealed a soul-stirring charm. Not only did the black battle armor on her not destroy a trace of her beauty, it instead added a bit of a unique charm. The woman was the commander of the 7th Army of the Heavenly Demon Religion's branch on the Cloud Plain, Yashilian. The Great Elder of the Heavenly Demon Religion pondered silently before saying slowly, "Someone will come for Huai and for revenge. There's no need for you to worry about him. From today onwards, our religion will leave the Cloud Plain. Don't interfere with the matters on the Cloud Plain." "Yes, Great Elder." The members of the upper echelon of the Heavenly Demon Religion all replied. Even though they were doubtful as to why they were abandoning the Cloud Plain, none of them dared to ask about it. Afterwards, the situation on the Cloud Plain immediately reversed. The deaths of the peak experts of the Tian Empire had greatly weakened the Tian Empire. Afterwards, the remaining forces of the Tian Empire were suppressed by the many peak clans led by the Heavens Link Peak. They immediately suffered defeat. Very soon, the central region fell. Under the lead of the 4 Grand Primes, the remaining forces of the Tian Empire broke out of the encirclement and retreated to the southern region of the Cloud Plain. They cast down layers of formations, preparing to use the southern region as the final line of defense to fend off the attacks of the alliance led by the Heavens Link Peak. As for the alliance formed from the Heavens Link Peak, they had suffered heavy casualties in the previous battle. Their central force had been wiped out by the 4 Eternal Empires, so they clearly did not have the strength to deal with the remaining forces of the Tian Empire. They could not afford to suffer any more losses, so they moved very slowly when it came to dealing with the remaining forces of the Tian Empire. They could not afford to fight with their full strength, just like how the Tian Empire could not afford to fight to the death with them when they were at their peak. If the remaining Grand Primes of the Tian Empire really fought with their lives on the line, the Heavens Link Peak would have to pay quite a price. They might even be able to drag a Grand Prime down with them. Naturally, none of the Grand Primes of the Heavens Link Peak were willing to die with them. As a result, they entered a stalemate with the remaining forces of the Tian Empire. In the northern region of the Cloud Plain, the imperial family of the Shi dynasty was unable to cheer up either. The Emperor Shi had gone to the God's Fallen clan to explain the internal strife of the Shi dynasty, but due to the interference of the ancestors of the Skyren sect and the Sword sect of 4 Poles, things did not go as smoothly as they had imagined. Moreover, there was no news of the ancestral emperor of the Shi dynasty, Shilian Shue. He was nowhere to be found. Losing a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime was an inestimable loss to the Shi dynasty. Moreover, the God's Fallen clan's stance was unknown, so the imperial family of the Shi dynasty faced constant danger. On the war-torn Cloud Plain, the only place that remained relatively calm was the Tianyuan family. The Tianyuan family was the only organization that did not have to worry about being affected by the complicated situation of the Cloud Plain. Even the divine kingdom of Ping Tian was unable to remain as calm as them during this time of turmoil. The remaining forces of the Tian Empire's alliance have actually fled to the southern region and are indirectly controlling the Blood Sun Empire. Ming Dong, who had just returned from the Tianyuan family, also received the news that the Tian Empire's alliance had been defeated. This made him frown slightly. "Uncle Ming, the formation around the provincial city needs to be strengthened. We need to use this formation to announce to the entire southern region that the provincial city is not a place they can invade. As long as they don't invade the provincial city, they can cause as much trouble as they want. Even if they turn the southern region upside down, it's none of my business. However, if they dare to come to the provincial city," a sliver of viciousness immediately flashed through Ming Dong's eyes towards the end. Uncle Ming nodded slightly and immediately went to make arrangements. Before long, Siyu suddenly bid farewell to the Tianyuan family before activating the talisman Emo Tunyan had left him. He left the Tianyuan family and went to the ruins of the spirit's world alone. What a powerful talisman! Where did he get this talisman from? Uncle Ming, since the moment the talisman was activated, and he immediately became doubtful. Jianshin had already returned to the soaring clouds peak with Baiyu in the radiant Saint Hall on the desolate plain. The lord of the soaring clouds peak, Han Xian, had been waiting there for quite some time already. As soon as he saw Jianshin and Baiyu return, Han Xian immediately smiled happily. Greetings to teacher. Greetings to teacher. Jianshin and Baiyu both bowed towards Han Xian. Han Xian was unable to hide his pride. He said, I already know about what happened on the sky-gazing peak. Changyang, your performance has truly taken me by surprise. My soaring clouds peak only has the three of you right now, and you're the weakest among us. However, I never thought that the weakest among the three of you would actually make my soaring clouds peak proud. As he said that, Han Xian slowly raised his hand. Immediately, extremely pure radiant saint force condensed in his hand. He said, Changyang, you're injured. Come, I'll personally heal you. With that, Han Xian pressed his hand towards Jianshin's chest. Jianshin took a step back in a hurry and said, Thank you for your concern, teacher. It's best if I deal with my own injuries. In the cruel environment of the Saints' world, if I have to trouble my seniors for everything, it just means that I'm destined for failure. Han Xian nodded approvingly. That's very reasonable. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave first. Recuperate well. Once you've recovered, come to the peak of the soaring clouds peak. I have something to ask you. At the same time, I'll pass on some of the more advanced radiant arts to you in advance. Moreover, I'll personally demonstrate the laws of the hallowed for you. I hope you can become a hallowed Saint Master as soon as possible. I believe you have the talent. Remember, hallowed Saint Master is the path that belongs to us. If you can't become a hallowed Saint Master, you'll still be an ant. Chapter 23:18. Baiyu looked at Jianshin in admiration after Han Xian's departure. Perhaps because she was overly excited, her face was completely red. Junior brother. No. Senior brother, I never thought you'd actually defeat Wencheng. You're just too powerful. You're just too impressive. From today onwards, you're my second senior brother. Baiyu hugged Jianshin's arm as she spoke excitedly. She did not notice that Jianshin's left arm was pressed firmly against her breasts as she hugged him. Second senior brother, quickly tell me how you defeated Wencheng. You have to teach me, so that the next time I see Wencheng, I'll fiercely beat him up. Baiyu looked at Jianshin hopefully. Her bright eyes flickered, filled with eagerness and desire. Junior sister, didn't you just happen to be standing below the ring? You clearly saw how I defeated Wencheng. Jianshin smiled bitterly. He broke free from Baiyu's tight embrace, rather awkwardly. At this moment, Baiyu suddenly realized that she had touched a forbidden area for women by hugging Jianshin's arm like that. This made her blush slightly, and she immediately let go of Jianshin's arm. Afterwards, she grumbled with a red face, I don't care. You have to teach me. I want to learn how to control Radiant Saint Force, or I won't let you go. With that, Baiyu stood in front of Jianshin with her arms spread. She really did seem like she would not let Jianshin leave if he did not agree. Jianshin felt helpless when he saw how Baiyu was behaving. He said, all right. I'll definitely do my best to teach you. Junior sister Baiyu, I need to heal first. Can you let me go back first? Jianshin pointed at his blood-soaked clothes before glancing into the distance casually. The first senior brother of the soaring clouds peak, Zhuofeng, stood there silently with his presence concealed in the weeds. He saw how close Baiyu and Jianshin were, causing his handsome face to sink. His gaze towards Jianshin was filled with deep hatred and jealousy. Bastard! How did that piece of trash Wencheng lose to Changyang, who only has a one-colored soul core? Even I, the mighty first senior brother of the soaring clouds peak with a three-colored soul core, was heavily injured by Wencheng, yet Wencheng was defeated by Changyang with a one-colored soul core. Doesn't that mean I'm nowhere near as powerful as a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core? What will the seniors from the other peaks think of me? The more Zhuofeng thought about it, the angrier he became. His face was terrifyingly sunken as he clenched his fists tightly. His fingernails had already pierced deeply into his flesh. Wencheng, who had defeated him, had actually lost to Changyang, whom he had never taken seriously, in the ring before everyone. This was a great mockery to Zhuofeng. Coupled with Baiju's reliance on Changyang after his glorious victory, Zhuofeng became even more furious. He began to resent Jianshen. Jianshen had already returned to his dwelling. He tidied up the messy dwelling and cast down a simple, low-level formation at the entrance before sitting down in the center of the dwelling. He did not heal the wound on his chest. With the regeneration of the chaotic body, there was no need for him to purposefully heal such a small wound. Not only have my senses greatly increased after fusing with a strand of chaotic force, but I can also sense the laws of the heavenly capital even more clearly. Even the radiant saint force I control seems to be slightly different. It's become much more powerful. Moreover, my almost perfect usage of radiant saint force isn't just because of the strength of my soul. I have a feeling that it's related to the mutation of my soul. Jianshen thought back to every detail of his battle with Wen Cheng in the dwelling. He sank in his thoughts for a very long time. After fusing with the strand of true chaotic force, he still had no idea just how great a change it had undergone, what special abilities it had given him, or whether it would leave behind any latent problems. Even until now, he still had no idea. As for the sword spirits, they had all fallen into a deep slumber after fusing the two swords. He could not wake them up no matter what, so Jianshen's thoughts of asking the sword spirits fell through. 3 days later, Jianshen emerged from the dwelling. He arrived at the top of the soaring cloud's peak under the morning glow and saw Han Xian, who had been in seclusion for a very long time. Han Xian's face was still rather pale. Clearly, he was quite injured. Even with his strength as a radiant god king, he had not made a full recovery after a few days of healing. Changyang, I clearly saw your battle against Wen Cheng on the ring that day. Your control and usage of radiant saint force has amazed me greatly. Moreover, I can tell that you have extremely abundant battle experience. You must have gone through many trials of life and death before joining the Radiant Saint Hall. I am very happy to have such an outstanding student like you. Han Xian was extremely amiable. He praised Jianshen heavily at first before passing on some radiant arts of even greater levels to Jianshen. In the end, Han Xian spent a great deal of effort to demonstrate the laws of the hallowed to Jianshen personally. He hoped that his disciple could become a hallowed Saint Master sooner. Jianshen closed his eyes and began to comprehend the laws of the hallowed that Han Xian had demonstrated. Although he had already comprehended the laws of the hallowed and become a hallowed Saint Master long ago, his comprehension of the laws of the hallowed remained at the initial level. However, Han Xian's comprehension of the laws of the hallowed had reached the level of the Divine King. As a result, the laws of the hallowed that Han Xian had demonstrated were still quite helpful to Jianshen now that he had become a hallowed Saint Master. A few hours later, Jianshen slowly opened his eyes. He saw that Han Xian had stopped his demonstration of the laws of the hallowed long ago. He sat before Jianshen as he looked at him with shining eyes. His gaze was filled with deep anticipation. Changyang, how's your comprehension? Han Xian asked. I've gained something. Han Xian nodded in satisfaction. Becoming a hallowed Saint Master is not something that can be accomplished overnight. Changyang, cultivate well. I hope you can become a hallowed Saint Master when you become a two-colored Radiant Saint Master. Teacher, what if I become a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core? Jianshen asked. You want to become a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core? Ha ha! Han Xian burst into laughter when he heard that. He pointed at Jianshen and said, Changyang, what are you thinking about? Do you think the laws of the hallowed are so easy to comprehend? I want you to become a hallowed Saint Master with a two-colored soul core already because I have extremely high hopes for you. As for becoming a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core, don't even think about it. Is it really that difficult to comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core? Jianshen asked. It's not just difficult. Changyang, do you know how long it has been since a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core appeared in our Radiant Saint Hall? Before Jianshen could reply, Han Xian answered, Let me tell you, it's already been over 1,000,000 years. Our Radiant Saint Hall recruits many disciples every year. Who knows how many disciples we've recruited in the past million years? There are even quite a few monstrous geniuses among them, but there hasn't been a single disciple who can comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core. Do you know just how difficult it is to become a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core now? I've learned something. Jianshun clasped his fist at Han Xian. Han Xian exhaled deeply as he stared at Jianshun with shining eyes. He said sternly, "However, if you really can comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core and become a hallowed Saint Master, you will immediately become the chosen saint. There will be no need for you to participate in the selection of the chosen saint. You will become an important figure in the Radiant Saint Hall, and the Radiant Saint Hall will nurture you with everything they have in the next 1,000 years. Even if a new chosen saint is chosen, you will be able to use your potential to become a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core to become a hallowed Saint Master, or even surpass the chosen saint. The resources you will enjoy will even surpass that of the chosen saint." Chapter 23:19. After leaving Han Xian's place, Jianshun returned to his dwelling. He sat down and closed his eyes and thought. Apart from Emo Tianyun, no one else knew that he had already become a hallowed Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. He learnt from Han Xian that he only needed to reveal his identity as a hallowed Saint Master, and the selection of the chosen saint would immediately be annulled. He would then become the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall, and the Radiant Saint Hall would nurture him wholeheartedly for the next 1,000 years. Once he became the chosen saint, entering the Tower of Radiance would become a piece of cake. There would be no need for him to go through so much trouble just to enter the Tower of Radiance. However, at the same time, if he became the chosen saint, he would naturally become the center of attention. He would become the topic of discussion for everyone in the Radiant Saint Hall. Naturally, there would be many people who would investigate him. Although he had the mask left behind by Emo Tianyun, this mask could only ensure that the majority of experts would not be able to see his true identity. Once he inadvertently revealed a trace of weakness, it was difficult to guarantee that no one would be able to use some clues to discover his identity. It did not matter if his martial soul force was exposed. At most, he would escape from the Radiant Saint Hall. If his other identity was exposed, it would not be as simple as escaping from the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, Jianshun was very hesitant about whether he should become the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall or not. However, at this moment, Jianshun's face changed. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the thick rock of the dwelling and see the world outside. Jianshun could clearly sense the extremely powerful senses of the soul sweep through the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall without any disguise. It basically searched through every inch of the land. In the next moment, a powerful formation rose up, enveloping all the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. This was the protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall. It was extremely powerful. After the senses of the soul swept through the Radiant Saint Hall, the protective formation was immediately activated. Jianshun's heart sank slightly. He walked out of the cave and looked up at the light screen formed by the array formation in the sky in silence. The screen of light around the Radiant Saint Hall flickered from time to time. Each time it flickered, it would fend off the invasion of powerful senses of the soul. Judging from the number of times the light screen flickered, there were no less than 10 powerful divine senses that had been blocked by it. The Radiant Saint Hall will temporarily seal off the mountain range. During this time, all disciples are forbidden from leaving without the permission of the elders. At the same time, an old voice boomed out. It boomed through the entire Radiant Saint Hall like a great bell. Jianshun looked in the direction of the voice and saw a black-robed old man standing with his hands behind his back in the sacred hall that stood above the clouds in the distance. He called out sternly, "Godly soul, tree expert." Jianshun immediately sensed the old man's cultivation. He had already surpassed the 7-colored soul core and had condensed the power of the soul to form a soul tree. He was equivalent to a primordial realm cultivator. It looks like the people who want the Inata Tower have already come to the desolate plain, thought Jianshun. At that moment, he could not help but feel fortunate that he possessed the mask Mo Tianyun had given him. Otherwise, his identity probably would have been exposed from the senses of the soul earlier. Afterwards, Jianshun remained in seclusion. He comprehended the radiant arts he had just obtained from Han Xin. At the same time, he spent a large amount of effort studying the changes to his soul. He did not venture out at all, maintaining an extremely low profile. He remained in seclusion for half a month this time. During that time, the matter of Chang Yang defeating someone with a 3-colored soul core with a 1-colored soul core was diverted away as the Radiant Saint Hall sealed off the mountain range. During that time, Baiyu visited Jinshin's dwelling frequently. She pestered Jinshin to teach her how to use Radiant Saint Force, calling him second senior brother time and time again. Jinshin could not become angry at all. Jinshin did indeed have a good impression of Baiyu. When Wen Sheng and the others from the Snowfall Peak came to make trouble for him, Baiyu was the only person on the Soaring Clouds Peak who was willing to help him despite the danger. At the same time, she was the only person who truly cared about him. As a result, Jinshin truly treated Baiyu as his junior sister. Second senior brother. At this moment, the protective formation outside Jinshin's dwelling pulsed, and Baiyu rushed in. Jinshin slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Baiyu calmly and said, "Junior sister, why are you in such a hurry? What happened?" "Second senior brother, I just returned from the main peak. I heard an extremely shocking piece of news there," Baiyu said emotionally. Jinshin's heart skipped a beat. He asked what news. Baiyu caught her breath and said, "Second senior brother, you've been in seclusion all day, so you probably don't know that something huge has happened on the desolate plain. I only just heard the envoys on the main peak mention that many peak experts have arrived on the desolate plain. With the arrival of these peak experts, all the great organizations and clans on the desolate plain have pulled back. They restrain their clansmen and disciples as if they are facing a great enemy. It said that these peak experts can easily turn the desolate plain upside down. But do you know why these peak experts have come to the desolate plain? Second senior brother, you probably won't believe me even if I tell you. So many peak experts have come to the desolate plain just to find a divine king called Jinshin." Baiyu sat down on the ground without any regard for her Leda-like appearance. She said in amazement, "Heavens, I really don't believe it. So many peak experts have personally come just to find a divine king. I really don't know what this divine king Jinshin has done to anger so many peak experts." Jinshin remained calm when he heard that. He said, "Junior sister, why are you so sure that this Jinshin has done something outrageous? Do you even need to ask? If he hasn't done anything outrageous, why would he offend so many peak experts at the same time?" Baiyu said naively. Then she paused and said seriously, "But speaking of which, I really do admire this senior called Jinshin a little. A divine king is actually hunted down by so many peak experts at the same time, and they can't find him even after so long. That's just too impressive." Chapter 23:20. Jinshin left the Soaring Clouds Peak. Using Radiant Saint Force, he flew towards the depths of the Radiant Saint Hall at a steady pace. The territory of the Radiant Saint Hall was extremely large. Whether it was from the east to the west or from the south to the north, it spanned over 1,000,000 kilometers. There were thousands of mountains in such a large region, with the 99 main mountains being the most important. Jinshin directly made his way to one of the 99 main mountains, the Guardian Peak. Very soon, Jinshin left the region of the sky-gazing peak. He stood with his hands behind his back as a layer of milky white Radiant Saint Force surrounded him. He moved through the mountains, vanishing into the clouds from time to time. Along the way, he came across quite a few Radiant Saint Masters. A few Radiant Saint Masters recognized Jinshin as well. This person seems to be Chang Yang from the sky-gazing peak. Why's he come here? Chang Yang? The one who defeated a 1-star genius with a 3-colored soul core with a 1-colored soul core? Yeah, he does seem very similar to Chang Yang. However, Chang Yang is only a 1-star genius. In my opinion, There's probably more to this than meets the eye for him to defeat a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core, with a 1-colored soul core. That's right. This rumor can't be trusted. If Changyang was a 9-star genius, it would be rather normal. After all, 9-star geniuses all possess the ability to challenge those who are stronger than them. However, Changyang is only a 1-star genius. His talent is even greater than mine. Is this Junior Changyang from the sky gazing peak up ahead? I come from the War Peak, Qizhang. I hope I can spar with Junior Changyang. Similar voices rang out from time to time. There were many people who openly stated their origins and wanted to spar with Jianshan. After all, Jianshan had made a name for himself by defeating Wencheng on the ring of the sky-gazing peak. Even though his name had not reached the Sacred Hall and attracted the attention of the elders, he had basically become a household name outside the Sacred Hall. Jianshan ignored the questions and challenges in the surroundings. He focused on traveling, and he moved faster and faster. In particular, when he discovered a few Radiant Saint Masters pursuing him, he dove into the clouds in the sky and used his radiant wings to shake them off with even greater speed. He was in no mood to waste time with these people right now. Changyang is actually afraid of battle, not daring to say anything. What does that mean? It means that he's afraid. That means that his accomplishments and his achievements on the sky-gazing peak are probably fake. When the Radiant Saint Masters in the surroundings saw how Jianshan dodged time and time again, it only confirmed their suspicions. Several hours later, Jianshan finally arrived at his destination, the Myriad Flowers Peak. The Radiant Clouds Peak was also one of the 99 main peaks. Its name came from the fact that the entire peak was planted with thousands of wondrous flowers and herbs. As a result, the peak was always enveloped by a heavy fragrance. Jianshan began to erase his presence after arriving there. He immediately vanished from everyone's sight, avoiding the various formations on the peak as he carefully made his way to the top. At this moment, 2 white-robed women strolled leisurely on the flower-covered path at the top of the Radiant Clouds Peak. They conversed casually. Amongst them, one of them was already close to middle age. She had a graceful, luxurious, and extraordinary bearing, as she carried the aura of a superior. She was the lord of the Radiant Clouds Peak, Donglin Qiushui. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was as beautiful as a goddess. Her skin was white, and her eyes were as dark as ink. She gave off a sacred presence of lust, preventing people from having any thoughts of profaning her. The woman was Donglin Yinshui. She possessed great beauty and was also one of the 5 candidates for the position of Chosen Saint. Yinshui, the competition for Chosen Saint is about to begin. It will have an immeasurable influence on your future. You have to cultivate properly in the Sacred Hall during such an important time. Don't come to visit me, Donglin Qiushui said sincerely. Donglin Yinshui sighed gently when she heard that. She said, Auntie, your expectations for me are far too high. Out of the 5 candidates, Jianshan and Xianbin have almost reached late 4-colored soul cores. Once the day of the competition arrives, it's extremely likely for the 2 of them to reach late 4-colored soul cores. And ensure to have mid 4-colored soul cores as well. My cultivation is the weakest out of the 5 of them. Even the elders who teach me in the Sacred Hall don't expect me to surpass the other 4 and become the Chosen Saint. As a result, Yinshui has no interest in the position of Chosen Saint at all. Donglin Yinshui's voice was filled with deep helplessness. Don't be discouraged. Don't you still have over 2 years? With your talent, if you work hard during those 2 years, there's still a chance for you to break through again. Once you reach mid 4-colored soul core, you'll stand on the same line as the 4 of them. The difference will be extremely small, Donglin Qiushui encouraged. I can only try my best in the next 2 years, Donglin Yinshui said gently. She frowned slightly, clearly feeling the pressure as well. Auntie, I'm rather tired. I'll go rest first. All right, go ahead. Donglin Yinshui returned to the quiet courtyard her aunt had given her on the top of the Myriad Flowers Peak. She sat down on a rock and sank in her thoughts. Everyone wants the position of Chosen Saint, but defeating the other 4 9-star heavens is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Donglin Yin Shui's heart was filled with bitterness. At the same time, she felt unwilling to accept this. She was the youngest out of the 5 of them, and she had cultivated for the shortest amount of time as well. As a result, the competition for the position of chosen saint this time was very unfair to her. If she had enough time, she was confident that she could catch up to the other 4, but there really was not enough time right now. At this moment, a fallen leaf drifted over the walls of the courtyard. With a gentle breeze, it flew into the courtyard where Donglin Yin Shui resided. In the end, it just happened to land in Donglin Yin Shui's hand. The fallen leaf was extremely ordinary. Similar fallen leaves would appear quite often, so Donglin Yin Shui did not care at all. She casually brushed it aside. However, in the next moment, Donglin Yin Shui's eyes suddenly narrowed. Her eyes shone brightly as she stared at the fallen leaf. The patterns on the green leaf interweaved together in an abnormally complicated manner, forming a row of tiny words in the end. Chapter 23-21. Assist me in becoming the chosen saint? Who is this? What bold words? Donglin Yin Shui frowned slightly as she looked at the tiny characters completely composed of the veins on the leaf in her hand. It was only a very ordinary leaf, so changing the veins on it was nothing difficult. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui was unable to determine the person's strength through the leaf. In the next moment, Donglin Yin Shui immediately expanded the senses of her soul in all directions in an attempt to find the person who had sent the message to her through the leaf. However, to her disappointment, she failed to discover anything even when she expanded the senses of her soul to the limit. Since this person has the confidence to help me obtain the position of Holy Son, it means that he is definitely not an ordinary person. But the strange thing is, why didn't they directly come to find me and tell me in front of me? Instead, they used this method to contact me to go to the moon's reflection lake. Donglin Yin Shui stared at the leaf in thought as she gradually became doubtful. Or is this a trap? Are they purposefully drawing me to the moon's reflection lake to do something detrimental to me? A cold light immediately flashed through Donglin Yin Shui's eyes when she thought up to there. Although she was a woman, she was definitely not a weak and feeble person. But soon afterwards, Donglin Yin Shui shook her head. She was a 9-star genius of the Radiant Saint Hall and one of the 5 candidates to become the chosen saint, who would be bold enough to do anything detrimental to her in the Radiant Saint Hall. The night of the full moon, the moon's reflection lake. I'll go see this mysterious person tonight. I hope he doesn't disappoint me, Donglin Yin Shui murmured gently. The position of chosen saint was also an irresistible temptation to her. As long as there was even the slightest chance of her becoming the chosen saint, she would never give up on it. Night fell, and the bright moon rose into the sky. Tens of thousands of miles away from 10,000 Flower Peak, there was a huge lake surrounded by 8 mountains. When the bright moonlight scattered down, it caused this huge lake to immediately become sparkling. At a glance, it seemed as though the entire lake was covered with a thick layer of moonlight. The scenery was beautiful, just like a fairyland. The lake was the moon's reflection lake. It was one of the more famous places in the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, Jianshun, who wore the white robes of a Radiant Saint Master, sat on a huge rock calmly beside the moon's reflection lake. He raised his head slightly as he stared at the huge moon in a daze. I wonder how Fairy Haoyue's situation after so many years. Her enemy, Nan Patian, has the flame Reverend Grand Prime standing behind him. He's a supreme expert who's bold enough to lay his hands on one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world. I hope Fairy Haoyue doesn't act recklessly. Jianshun could not help but think of Fairy Haoyue, who he had parted with for many days as he stared at the bright moon in the sky. He felt slightly worried. At this moment, a gentle, white light shot through the night sky and slowly landed beside the moon's reflection lake. Then, the white light dissipated, revealing a beautiful woman in a white dress. Her entire body was filled with a holy aura. She was Donglin Yin Shui. Donglin Yin Shui's clothes were whiter than snow. She hovered an inch above the ground as she looked around. In the end, Her gaze landed on Jianshan, who was several kilometers away from her. At this moment, Jianshan stopped looking at the moon and looked at Donglin Yanshui. With a gentle pinch of his fingers, a leaf immediately fell down, landing between them coincidentally. He waved it at Donglin Yanshui, who was several kilometers away. Donglin Yanshui's eyes narrowed. She could not help but study Jianshan properly before slowly strolling over. She basically flew close to the ground as she approached Jianshan. In the end, she landed gently on the rock that Jianshan sat on. Her feet did not touch the ground, so she stood 3 meters away from Jianshan. Originally, I thought that the person who told me to come here would be a divine king of radiant light at the very least, or even an elder of the Sacred Hall, or an expert from a large clan or organization outside. I never thought that it would be a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. Donglin Yanshui stared at Jianshan as undisguised disappointment filled her eyes. Jianshan smiled without minding at all. You don't need to know what my cultivation is because it's not important. What's important is that you only need to know that I can give you things that even the elders and the large clans and organizations outside can't give you. I know you don't believe me. I also know that other people are much wealthier than me, and the resources they possess are not something that I can compare to. However, can these people help you achieve the final victory in the competition between the chosen saint? A gleam of light flashed through Yan Shui's eyes. A strange light flickered through her dark eyes as she stared at Jianshan in interest. She said, I do want to know what a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core is relying on to be so confident. Jianshan smiled mysteriously. With a flip of his hand, a pure soul immediately appeared. As soon as the pure soul appeared, it gave off a pure and surging presence. It immediately roused Jianshan and Donglin Yanshui's spirits. Just a single breath was enough to make them feel like their souls were rapidly growing. A pure soul? How do you have something like that? Donglin Yanshui cried out. She was no longer able to remain calm before the pure soul. Her face was filled with shock and disbelief. Jianshan stowed the pure soul away and smiled. Do you believe that I have the ability now? Donglin Yanshui sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed herself down. She stared at Jianshan with extremely mixed feelings and asked, Where did you get this pure soul? Pure soul was extremely precious. Even with Donglin Yanshui's status in the Radiant Saint Hall, she only knew about it through the records and the accounts of the elders. She did not even have the right to see the pure soul in person. However, Donglin Yanshui understood the uses of the pure soul extremely well. Not only was it extremely useful to fighters, but it was also a supreme treasure to Radiant Saint Masters. It was extremely precious. Even in the Radiant Saint Hall, it was an extremely rare item. Most of the elders did not possess it, and if she had this pure soul, then her chances of seizing the position of the Holy Sun would be greatly increased. Tell me, what do you want in exchange for the pure soul? Donglin Yanshui held back her excitement. Jianshan stood up from the rock and said, Every single chosen saint can choose 9 people to become their protectors. I only want one of them. Of course, you know my cultivation as well. Donglin Yanshui's gaze immediately became strange when she heard that. She said, You're willing to offer up the pure soul to help me become the chosen saint in order to become one of my 9 retainers? Donglin Yanshui's gaze towards Jianshan became extremely strange. She slowly took a step back and stared at Jianshan cautiously. She said with some coldness, What are your intentions? But let me make it clear first. If you want to approach me through this method and gain my goodwill, I'd advise you to give up. Chapter 23-22. You've misunderstood. I have no interest in you at all, nor do I have any improper thoughts. The only reason I want a spot is to enter the Tower of Radiance, Jianshan explained with a bitter smile. Only then did the caution and disdain in Donglin Yanshui's eyes disperse slightly. She asked, There's something that I don't understand. Out of the 5 candidates, why don't you go for Jianshan and Xian Bin, who are more powerful and more likely to become the chosen saint? Why do you choose me? The reason is very simple. It's because you're the weakest out of the 5, so you have the least chance of becoming the chosen saint. If I can assist you so that you can turn the tides and become the new chosen saint, you'll naturally be even more grateful to me. It'll make my journey to the Tower of Radiance even smoother. Of course, that's only one of the reasons. Most importantly, I've heard about the 5 of you from my teacher, so I know a little about your past. Although I don't know everything, I have a rough understanding of you at the very least. I feel like you're more reliable than the other 4, Jianshan said. Are you really only doing this to enter the Tower of Radiance, and there's no other reason? Donglin Yinshui stared at Jianshan closely. It's absolutely true. All right, I can agree to that. However, there are only 2 years left until the selection, and Xianbin and Jianshan have both reached the peak of mid-4-colored soul core. They can break through to late 4-colored soul core at any time. As a result, if I want to defeat them, I need to reach late 4-colored soul core. Even though pure soul is extremely precious and effective, it's extremely difficult for me to break through from early 4-colored soul core to late 4-colored soul core in such a short amount of time, said Donglin Yinshui. Jianchun said after a moment of thought, you don't have to worry about that. Apart from the pure soul, I'll give you 1,000 leaf lotus as well. In any case, since I have chosen you, I will naturally do my best to help you obtain the position of Holy Sun. A gleam of light immediately flashed through Donglin Yinshui's eyes when she heard about the 1,000-leaf lotus. She said, the peak lord of the sky, gazing peak possesses 1,000-leaf lotus. Jianshan and Xianbing have visited him time and time again in hopes of exchanging for it. In the end, the Lord of the Sky Gazing Peak bestowed the 1,000-leaf lotus upon a radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core. Donglin Yinshui stared at Jianshan with a strange gaze and said, you should be Changyang who defeated Changyang with a 3-colored soul core with a 1-colored soul core. Jianshan nodded. He did not deny it. Afterwards, he separated the pure soul and the 1,000-leaf lotus into a space ring and passed it to Donglin Yinshui. He said, if you have any other needs during this period of time, or if you run into any difficulties, you can come and find me. As long as I can help, I will definitely do my best. In order for Donglin Yinshui to obtain the position of Holy Sun so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance successfully, Jianshan was willing to pay any price. Currently, the desolate plain was filled with experts. Even though he possessed the mask Mo Tianyun had given him, preventing most peak experts from seeing through him, all of these experts possessed extraordinary abilities. However, the peak experts were all extremely powerful and possessed many tricks up their sleeves. As a result, he needed to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible and obtain the cultivation method he wanted before leaving the desolate plain. After leaving behind the items, Jianshan left. He returned to the soaring clouds peak on Radiance. Donglin Yinshui held the space ring that contained the pure soul and the 1,000-leaf lotus as she watched Jianshan leave. The light in her eyes flickered as she wandered inside. Just what is Chang Yang's background to be able to casually take out pure soul that even the elders of the Sacred Hall don't possess? Or does he not know the true use of the pure soul at all? In the next few days, Jianshan remained in seclusion due to his wounds. As a result, he did not summon the 3 disciples every morning. As a result, Jianshan lived an extremely peaceful life. He spent all his time cultivating in his dwelling and rarely ventured out. His junior sister, Baiyu, became a frequent visitor. She basically visited Jianshan every day and would stay for an entire day. She would come early in the morning and only leave Jianshan's dwelling reluctantly when it was dark. Naturally, Baiyu had come to get Jianshan to teach her how to use Radiant Saint Force. Jianshan naturally did not hold back at all to his junior sister. He passed on his understanding and usage of Radiant Saint Force to her in detail. He sincerely hoped that Baiyu could become a little stronger. However, the end result was not ideal. No matter how Jianshan demonstrated and explained, Baiyu was unable to grasp even the slightest bit of his superb control and usage of Radiant Saint Force. Oh my, why is it so difficult? I've tried countless times, but it still doesn't work. Senior brother, tell me, why can you do it so easily? Is there any other secret? After failing again, Baiyu gave up with a dispirited expression and said dejectedly with her head hung low. Perhaps it has something to do with talent, said Jianshan. Now, he had confirmed that his superb control over Radiant Saint Force was not only because of the strength of his soul. The most important reason was probably the strand of true chaotic force that had fused with his soul. Due to the strand of chaotic force, his soul underwent some sort of change. As a result, he gained an extraordinary affinity with Radiant Saint Force and the various laws. Junior sister, let me explain the laws of the Hallowed to you. Teacher just happened to demonstrate the laws of the Hallowed to me a few days ago, allowing me to gain a new understanding of the laws of the Hallowed. I hope it can help you, said Jinshan. Afterwards, he immediately described the scenes of him comprehending the laws of the Hallowed, as well as his understanding of the laws of the Hallowed. The laws of the Hallowed were one of the 3,000 ways. It was a law of the world and was extremely profound. It was impossible to explain. Grasping it required one's own comprehension. Jianshan did not actually hold any hopes that Baiyu could comprehend the laws of the Hallowed in a short amount of time. He only hoped that he could help Baiyu gain a clearer understanding of the laws of the Hallowed, so that she would take fewer detours in the future. However, as soon as Jianshan explained his understanding of the laws of the Hallowed, he felt his soul gradually enter a state of emptiness. The laws of the Hallowed that existed everywhere in the surroundings seemed to have fused with him, changing according to his will. At this moment, Jianshan wanted to do everything he could to help Baiyu build a foundation and point out a path so that she could become a hallowed Saint Master in the future. As a result, he could clearly sense that the laws of the Hallowed that existed everywhere in the surroundings began to slowly disintegrate, appearing in the simplest form possible. This was the same as when Han Xin had personally demonstrated the laws of the Hallowed to Jianshan, allowing the profound laws to be displayed in the clearest manner possible. This method was similar to the imprint of ways of passing on. Chapter 23:23. If there was a hallowed Saint Master in Jianshan's dwelling right now, they would discover in surprise that the laws of the Hallowed there had become much simpler all of a sudden. Originally, Baiyu did not take Jianshan's explanation of the laws of the Hallowed to heart. After all, Jianshan only had a one-colored soul core. Even if he had comprehended the laws of the Hallowed, was he supposed to be able to surpass her first senior Zhuofeng? But very soon, she discovered that Jianshan's voice reverberated in her head like a great bell, shaking up her mind. Her understanding of the laws of the Hallowed gradually cleared up from the heavy fog she had been in before. Vaguely, Baiyu seemed to grasp something. She could not help but close her eyes and enter a deeper state of comprehension. At the same time, Jianshan was secretly surprised. He had never thought that his soul would gain such an ability after fusing with a strand of true chaotic force. At that moment, he felt like he was a king, able to command the laws of the world and make the laws of the Hallowed change according to his will. At that moment, Jianshan felt like his relationship with the laws of the Hallowed was like that of a ruler and his subject. However, Jianshan had only just become a hallowed Saint Master, so his comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed remained at a basic level. As a result, his control over the laws of the Hallowed remained at a basic level as well. At the same time, Zhuofeng concealed his presence in an extremely well-hidden bush outside Jianshan's dwelling. He carefully hid there as he stared at Jianshan's dwelling from afar. Junior sister and Changyang's relationship has become closer and closer recently. Not only does she come to Changyang's dwelling every day, but she'll even stay there for an entire day. Looking at how reluctant she is when she leaves, has their relationship reached a point where they're practically glued to each other? Zhuofeng thought through gritted teeth with a sunken face. He had always secretly liked Baiyu. Now that he saw how close Baiyu and Changyang had become, he became extremely irritable. He had even almost lost his mind a few times. Zhuofeng looked at the sky. It had gradually been devoured by darkness, and the endless mountains in the surroundings were gradually enveloped by night as well. A huge, round moon slowly rose into the sky. It's already so late, so why hasn't Junior sister come out yet? God damn it, bastard. What are they doing so late at night? Zhuofeng became more and more irritable. His composure was gradually devoured by the descent of night. In the end, he could no longer endure it any longer. He walked out of the bush furiously and directly shattered the protective formation outside Jianshan's dwelling. Jianshan was completely focused on teaching Baiyu in the dwelling. However, at this moment, a rumble suddenly rang out, and the protective formation outside the dwelling immediately shattered. The white-robed Zhuofeng strode in with a radiant sword in hand. His face was sunken. The sudden change made Jianshan stop teaching. With that, the laws of the hallowed that permeated the dwelling immediately returned to normal, becoming complicated and profound once again. Baiyu, who had been comprehending the laws of the hallowed, was roused by the sudden sound. She was confused at first, but when she saw the shattered protective formation outside the dwelling and Zhuofeng striding over with his radiant sword, she immediately understood everything. Immediately, fury surged from the bottom of Baiyu's heart. She suddenly stood up and pointed at Zhuofeng. For the first time, she said furiously, "First senior brother, what are you doing? I was clearly about to comprehend the laws of the hallowed, yet you've ruined all my efforts." Baiyu was extremely furious. She felt like she was about to explode from anger. If she continued to comprehend the laws of the hallowed, it was extremely likely for her to break through and become a hallowed Saint Master. Hallowed Saint Masters with 2 colored soul cores were rare even in the Radiant Divine Hall. Every single one of them was a prodigy among prodigies. Yet Zhuofeng had suddenly interrupted her right when she was about to receive great glory. This made Baiyu extremely furious. She was unable to calm down no matter what. Zhuofeng sucked in a deep breath as he looked at the furious Baiyu. He forcefully calmed himself down and said coldly, "I just received news that a disciple of the Snowfall Peak has snuck in his second junior brother's dwelling. They want to do something to second junior brother. I was worried about second junior brother's safety, which was why I hurried over." Zhuofeng waved the radiant sword in his hand and said, "Look, I've even condensed the radiant sword beforehand. I'm already prepared to fight the intruder." Zhuofeng was indeed prepared for battle, but his opponent was not some disciple of the Snowfall Peak. Instead, it was Jianshan. Once he discovered that Jianshan had ill intentions towards Baiyu, he would move against Jianshan without any hesitation. Unfortunately, what he imagined did not happen. Moreover, Baiyu really did seem to be cultivating. As a result, Zhuofeng could not find a reason to move against Jianshan. Although Jianshan had defeated Wencheng, Zhuofeng did not believe it at all. He believed that the rumors were probably exaggerated. After all, Jianshan only had a 1-colored soul core. "Junior sister, it's getting late. You should go back first. I'll continue passing on my experiences to you tomorrow." Comprehending the laws of the hallowed isn't something that can be accomplished in a single day. Today was only a good start for you. If you can persist, I believe you'll succeed before long. Jianshan comforted her in a timely manner. Baiyu finally calmed down slightly after hearing Jianshan's words. She looked at the sky and discovered that it was pitch black outside. She bid farewell to Jianshan and left. After Baiyu's departure, the radiant sword in Zhuofeng's hand slowly dispersed. He looked at Jianshan and said threateningly, "Changyang, it's best if you stay away from junior sister. As for passing on the laws of the hallowed, I'm here. It's not up to a radiant Saint Master like you, who only has a 1-colored soul core, to tell her what to do." With that, Zhuofeng directly left. Jianshan stood in the dwelling and looked at the simple formation that Zhuofeng had destroyed. He murmured, "I never thought that Zhuofeng would actually want to kill me." Jianshan shook his head gently. He made his way out of the dwelling and cast down the formation again. He did not take Zhuofeng seriously at all. After doing all that, Jianshan sat down in the dwelling again. He thought about what he had experienced when he passed on the laws of the hallowed to Baiyu. Since I can control the laws of the hallowed in the world and make the complicated and profound laws of the hallowed break down on their own and display them in the clearest way possible, doesn't that mean I can use the same method to control the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction? Jianshan thought. At that moment, he felt a sense of urgency. He wanted to immediately try out the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction. If his guess was correct, Did that not mean that as long as he wanted to, he could allow cultivators who comprehended the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction to comprehend their corresponding laws in the easiest way possible? Jinshin's blood began to boil when he thought up to there. If his guess was correct, it meant that as long as he was here, he could allow people below him to break through in the easiest way possible without using any heavenly resources. He could nurture a large group of experts in the shortest amount of time possible. It's a pity that this is the Radiant Saint Hall. Once I use the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction here, it'll be discovered. As a result, I can't try out any other laws apart from the laws of the hallowed here. P.S. Xiaoyao has reposted a picture of the first female lead of the book, Yu Yu, on his public account. It's extremely pretty this time. To those who want to see it, please follow Xiaoyao's public account on WeChat, ZingXingCiao110. You can also find the pseudonym Xinxing Xiaoyao by searching for it on WeChat. After following him, you just have to reply Yu Yu. Chapter 23-24. The Radiant Saint Hall stood above the clouds, shining with resplendent light. The space within it was extremely huge, like a miniature world. At this moment, a thick stone door was slowly opening at a certain spot in this sacred hall. A young man in long white robes had his hands behind his back as he slowly walked out of the secret chamber. Young Master Xian, you've emerged from seclusion? When the two guards in purple robes outside the secret room saw this young man, they immediately greeted him with enthusiasm. Yep, the young man who was referred to as young Master Xian nodded. His face was filled with undisguised arrogance. He was one of the 5 candidates of the Radiant Saint Hall, Jianshin. Jianshin, you've emerged so quickly. How's your comprehension of the spirit ascension technique? An old voice rang out. A white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion silently appeared before Gongzheng Xian. Afterwards, 2 more white-robed Radiant Saint Masters appeared after the old man. They basically appeared at the same time. As if they had teleported, they arrived silently, arriving from afar in a single instance. One of them was a middle-aged man with a resolute face, while the other was an old woman who seemed to be in her 70s. Disciple Jianshin greets Teacher Ma, Teacher Chun, and Teacher Mao. Jianshin immediately became filled with respect when the 3 of them appeared. He said politely, this was because the 3 of them had all surpassed 7-colored soul cores and condensed soul trees. Experts like that were elders in the Radiant Saint Hall. They possessed great statuses. In the Radiant Saint Hall, every single 9-star genius would be personally taught by an elder. In particular, it just happened to be the time when the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall would be replaced. The new chosen saint would be chosen from Jianshin and the other 4 9-star geniuses. As a result, the 5 candidates received special treatment. Every single one of them would be taught by 1 or more elders and nurtured with their full strength. Gongzheng Xian's teachers were the 3 elders of the Sacred Hall. Teachers, I've already comprehended the basics of the spirit ascension technique, Jianshin said. Good. You really haven't disappointed us. Jianshin, it's getting closer and closer to the selection of chosen saint. As a result, you can't slack off. You have to cultivate diligently so that you can reach late 4-colored soul core in the next 2 years and become a chosen saint. You can bring glory to US, an elder said sincerely. Yes, I will do my best. I won't disappoint you. Teachers, Jianshin clasped his fist. Afterwards, the 3 elders left, leaving behind Jianshin at the entrance of the secret room alone. Although I've already reached the peak of mid-4-colored soul core, breaking through in 2 years is just far too difficult. It's not something that can be achieved through normal cultivation, Jianshin murmured to himself. Gongzheng Xian murmured. Cold light flickered in his eyes as he muttered to himself. It's time to go and obtain the 1,000-leaf lotus. As long as I obtain it, I will definitely be able to break through to the late 4-colored primal core within 2 years. Xian Bin should be emerging from seclusion soon. I have to get it before him. I can't let the 1,000-leaf lotus end up in his hands. In the morning, Jian Chun was cultivating in his dwelling on the soaring clouds peak. However, at this moment, the protective formation he had cast down outside the dwelling actually began to distort. Afterwards, a black-robed, middle-aged man directly passed through the formation and entered the dwelling without any obstructions. Jianshun ended his cultivation in the dwelling and slowly opened his eyes. He stared at the uninvited middle-aged man calmly and said indifferently, "Who are you? Why did you break into my cave residence without my permission?" The protective formation Jianshun had cast down outside the dwelling was of an extremely low grade. Only then could it match his identity as a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. However, the black-robed man was equivalent to an overgod, so his formation was naturally unable to stop him. "You must be Changyang. You do seem rather composed. However, you don't need to know who I am. I've only come this time to pass on a message from young Master Jianshun. The young master wants you to name a price. The young master wants to buy the 1,000-leaf lotus in your possession." The black-robed man arrived before Jianshun at ease and looked down at Jianshun. "I'm not selling the 1,000-leaf lotus in my possession." Jianshun declined without any hesitation at all. The black-robed man frowned and said rather sternly, "The 1,000-leaf lotus is of great use to young Master Jianshun. At the same time, young Master Jianshun is determined to obtain the 1,000-leaf lotus. Doing this will only offend young Master Jianshun. Offending the future chosen saint for a mere 1,000-leaf lotus is not a wise decision. Do I have to sell it to Jianshun just because he needs it? Moreover, there are 5 candidates. It's still too early to decide who will be the future chosen saint," said Jianshun. The black-robed man's face sank. He immediately snorted coldly and said coldly, "Changyang, don't push your luck. Offending young Master Jianshun won't bring you any benefits at all." As he said that, a powerful presence radiated from him, crushing towards Jianshun. Jianshun remained seated on the ground without moving, but he purposefully acted like he was in pain. He already knew that the senses of Han Xian's soul had been following the black-robed man the moment he set foot on the soaring cloud's peak. "I wonder what Han Xian's attitude will be," Jianshun thought. However, as soon as that thought crossed his head, the white-robed Han Xian suddenly appeared before Jianshun. His face sank as he directly picked up the black-robed man and tossed him away mercilessly. He called out coldly, "You've even come to my territory to bully a disciple of my soaring cloud's peak. Do you really think my soaring cloud's peak is so easy to set foot in?" Han Xian was already a divine king of light. The black-robed man was only an overgod, so he was naturally unable to resist at all. When he was tossed away, he directly smashed through the protective formation outside Jianshun's dwelling before falling to the ground in an extremely horrible shape. "Protector Han." The black-robed man climbed to his feet. He looked at Han Xian, and his face immediately changed slightly. "Piss off. Without my permission, you're not allowed to take a single step into the territory of my soaring cloud's peak," Han Xian said coldly. The black-robed man's face became ugly, and he left without saying anything else. "Teacher." At this moment, Jianshun emerged from the dwelling as well. He clasped his fist at Han Xian. Han Xian turned around and looked at Jianshun. His coldness immediately melted away, and he became concerned. He asked, "Changyang, did I scare you?" "Not at all. Fortunately, you came in time, or who knows what would have happened," Jianshun said calmly. Han Xian sighed gently when he heard that. He said, "Now that the competition between the chosen saints is drawing near, the 5 candidates are all doing everything they can to increase their strength. The 1,000-leaf lotus just happens to be able to provide them with extremely obvious growth at their level of cultivation. As a result, they obviously won't give up on it." Han Xian looked at Jianshun sternly and said, "According to my understanding of Jianshun, he definitely won't give up. He'll definitely come back. Even Xian Bin will probably stick his nose in. It's best if you think of an appropriate way to deal with the 1,000-leaf lotus in your possession. You can't completely offend these 9-star geniuses. Their futures are even greater than mine. Thank you for your concern, teacher. I understand." At this moment, the black-robed man recognized by Han Xian stood before Jianshun on the top of the mountain. He told Jianshin about Jianshin's attitude. Jianshin's face immediately sank when he heard the black-robed man's explanation. He snorted coldly and said, "This Chang Yang really doesn't know what's good for him. Not only did he ignore my orders in the ring, but he even turned me down when I asked him to make the exchange. If it weren't for the fact that this is the Radiant Saint Hall and disciples are forbidden from killing each other, I would never have let him live." Chapter 23-25. Disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Chang Yang, get your ass out here. Why haven't you returned what you owe young Master Jianshin yet? The Soaring Clouds Peak was destined to be restless on this day. The black-clothed man that Han Xian had tossed out returned to the territory of the Soaring Clouds Peak after a few hours. However, he did not set foot on the Soaring Clouds Peak this time. Instead, he hovered in the air and called out from the outer region of the Soaring Clouds Peak. His voice was extremely loud, rumbling like thunder. Not only did it ring through the entire Soaring Clouds Peak, but it even caused the vegetation there to rustle. Even the nearby mountains could hear it clearly. He did not hold back at all when he called out. With his cultivation as an overgod, he directly alarmed the nearby mountains. Immediately, the nearby mountains became filled with people. Many Radiant Saint Masters looked in the direction of the voice. Within a hidden dwelling on the Soaring Clouds Peak, the low-level formation that Jianshin had just cast down was naturally unable to block out the voice. As a result, Jianshin roused from his cultivation. "You really won't go away." Jianshin opened his eyes and made his way out of the dwelling with a frown. He stood outside as he stared at the figure hovering in the air in the distance. He became slightly impatient. "Senior brother, what's going on? Why does this person say that you owe Jianshin something?" Bai Yu arrived before Jianshin with Radiant Saint Force. She glanced at the black-clothed man in the distance before asking Jianshin in doubt. "He's come for the 1,000-leaf lotus," Jianshin said indifferently. "Junior brother, just what do you owe Jianshin? You've actually provoked someone to come here and yell at you. If this makes it out, how are we, the disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak, supposed to raise our heads before others in the future?" Zhuo Feng, the eldest disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak, had also arrived. Before he even arrived, his reproachful voice could be heard from afar. When he arrived in front of Jianshin, his gaze became even sharper as he sternly said in a low voice, "Since you owe someone something, then hurry up and return it to them. Haven't you lost enough face?" Jianshin glanced at Zhuo Feng and mocked. "First, senior brother, the saint's world is dangerous. It's filled with intrigue and deception. You obviously don't know the dangers of the saint's world since you haven't truly set foot in it yet. Only when you truly emerge from your sheltered environment and face the storms of the saint's world alone will you truly understand that this world is not as peaceful as you imagine it to be. However, it'll probably be too late for you by then. That's because many people have already died in the saint's world at that time. Their souls have returned to the world. Therefore, junior brother will use this matter to teach eldest senior brother a good lesson and let eldest senior brother truly understand the dangers of the world. Eldest senior brother, you just need to stand aside and watch." "Chang Yang, how dare you?" Zhuo Feng's face was extremely sunken. How could he not understand that this was a form of mockery from Jianshin? In particular, Jianshin's disdain towards him infuriated Zhuo Feng. He felt like his dignity as the first senior brother had been severely challenged. "Jianshin, isn't that one of the 5 candidates of our Radiant Saint Hall? Chang Yang actually dares to not return what he owes to Jianshin. He's just far too bold. Junior Chang Yang, just what do you owe young Master Jianshin? Junior Chang Yang, since you owe someone something, then hurry up and return it. If you don't return what you owe, not only will it affect Junior Chang Yang's reputation, but it'll affect the reputation of the Soaring Clouds Peak as well." At this moment, Radiant Saint Masters flew over from the nearby mountains one after another. They all criticized Jianshin. Jianshin smiled indifferently on the Soaring Clouds Peak. He stared at the black-clothed man and said, "I also want to know just what I owe Jianshin." The Radiant Saint Masters who had gathered from the nearby mountains all stopped talking when Jianshin said that. They all looked at the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man immediately snorted coldly and said in a clear voice, "When you fought Wen Cheng on the arena on Sky Gazing Peak Square that day, the Peak Master of Sky Gazing Peak gave 1,000-leaf lotus as a reward to the final victor. You, on the other hand, secretly asked young Master Gongzheng Xin to help you obtain the final victory. After that, you gave the final reward of victory, the 1,000-leaf lotus, to young Master Gongzheng Xin." The black-clothed man did not restrain his voice in the slightest. As a result, every single sentence and word he received spread far and wide like rolling heavenly thunder. At that moment, not only did the people near the sky-gazing peak hear about the secret behind Chong Yang's victory over a 3-colored soul core expert with a 1-colored soul core, they all began to discuss. I really never thought that there would be something like this behind Chong Yang's glorious victory. So that's how it is. Like I said, how can someone with a 1-colored soul core defeat someone with a 3-colored soul core? No wonder Chong Yang fled in the end when I tried to spar with him last time. As it turns out, he doesn't have the strength he's rumored to have. He doesn't dare to accept the challenge at all. Quick, spread the news and let everyone know the truth. Shatter Chong Yang's legend. At this moment, it was not just the Radiant Saint Masters gathered around the soaring clouds peak. Even the various mountains in the surroundings began to talk like that. This news even spread to one of the 99 main peaks, the square of Sky Gazing Peak, at an astonishing speed. Then, with Sky Gazing Peak as the center, it spread in all directions. Jianshan defeating a 3-colored soul core expert with a 1-colored soul core had shaken up the Radiant Saint Hall. Basically, everyone knew about it. If it were not for the fact that the Radiant Saint Hall had suddenly sealed off the mountain range and diverted everyone's attention, the matter probably would have continued to spread. In the end, it might have even reached the Sacred Hall. Now that everyone believed they knew the truth, they naturally could not help but sigh. It's not like that. It's not like that. Baiyu became flustered for a moment when she heard the discussions of everyone. She knew that if this matter really made it out, her senior brother's reputation would be ruined. Unfortunately, she felt extremely powerless as she listened to the gossip of the disciples gathered around the soaring clouds peak. She had no way of explaining herself. However, Jianshan remained composed. He did not care about this at all. He said with composure, "Do you have evidence?" The man in black sneered. "Evidence? Of course I do. Where's Wen Cheng?" Very soon, the second senior brother of the Snowfall Peak, Wen Cheng, flew over from afar as a ball of light. His face was sunken, and heavy killing intent filled his eyes. The second senior brother of the Snowfall Peak, Wen Cheng, has actually come. Senior brother Wen Cheng was directly involved. He understands the situation the best. Let's see what junior brother Wen Cheng has to say first. Many disciples around began to discuss. On a distant mountain peak, there were even some high-ranking disciples with 3-colored yuan cores, and above were paying attention to this matter with interest. Chapter 23-26. Wen Cheng sneered. He stared at Jianshan and said, "I was still very confused that day on the stage. I did not understand why young Master Jianshan wanted me to lose to you, a Radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core. But now I finally understand. As it turns out, you secretly begged young Master Jianshan to help you so that you could make a name for yourself in the Radiant Saint Hall and satisfy your vanity. As a form of gratitude, you gave the 1,000-leaf lotus to young Master Jianshan. It's just that Chong Yang, I never thought you would be someone like that. Because of young Master Jianshan, I purposefully lost to you on the stage so that you could obtain the final victory, but you wanted to keep the 1,000-leaf lotus for yourself. You didn't fulfill your promise to young Master Jianshan at all. Chong Yang, do you still have the face to continue existing in the Radiant Saint Hall for a despicable person like you?" Towards the end, Wen Cheng's tone became stern. However, in his heart, he felt the pleasure of revenge. He had discussed all of this with Jianshan long ago. In order to obtain the 1,000-leaf lotus so that he could successfully break through in the future, Jianshan was basically willing to do anything. However, Wen Cheng had always treated his defeat to Jianshan as a stain of shame that he would never be able to wash away. In the past few days, he had descended into madness. He was too ashamed to face the world. As a result, when Jianshan sent people to find him and told him his intentions, Wen Cheng agreed without any hesitation at all. To him, cooperating with Gongzheng Xin to frame Jianshan would bring him no harm at all. Instead, he would be able to find a suitable excuse to absolve himself of the humiliation he had suffered back then. He would be able to regain the dignity he had lost back then. The radiant Saint Masters who gathered from the surrounding mountains all became enlightened when they heard Wen Cheng's words. As they discussed among themselves, their gazes towards Jianshan all changed. Their gazes were filled with disappointment, disdain, and even blatant mockery. Indeed, many of them looked down on him for doing something like that. Wen Cheng, you're despicable. You purposefully twisted the truth and twisted the truth. The battle that day was nothing like what you said. Bai Yu called out to Wen Cheng angrily from beside Jianshan. Unfortunately, her shout was not the slightest bit persuasive in the ears of the crowd. I never thought that my soaring clouds peak would have such a shameless disciple like you. You've completely disgraced the soaring clouds peak. Junior sister, don't stay with a person like that. Zhuo Feng stood to one side as well, reprimanding him like a senior. He did not care about the truth of the matter. As long as there was an opportunity to humiliate Jianshan, he would not let it go. He did not care about his fellow disciples at all. Jianshan's eyes turned cold when he heard that. He knew that Zhuo Feng was prejudiced against him. If there were no outsiders present, it would have been fine, but there were so many disciples from other peaks gathered here. At a time like this, Zhuo Feng did not consider the bigger picture and even wanted to cause internal strife with him, helping outsiders to target him. This truly angered Jianshan. Zhuo Feng, the person who has disgraced the soaring clouds peak, is you, not me. It looks like it's time for you to face up to reality, Jianshan said coldly to Zhuo Feng. He formed a seal with his hand and directly pressed it towards Zhuo Feng. Immediately, powerful Radiant Saint Force surged, and a huge hand condensed from Radiant Saint Force that was a meter wide pressed towards Zhuo Feng with blinding light. This is the Radiant Palm. This is impossible. Zhuo Feng's eyes immediately narrowed to the size of the eye of the formation. Disbelief filled his face, and he immediately tried to defend himself. He directly swung out with a radiant sword. However, when his radiant sword struck the hand of profound light, the radiant sword actually shattered, while the hand of profound light continued onwards without slowing down at all. It struck Zhuo Feng heavily. Zhuo Feng immediately grunted as he staggered backwards. Every step he took left a deep footprint in the ground. When he finally controlled his figure and stood up straight, his face had already turned livid and pale, and he was both shocked and furious in his heart, causing him to be extremely shocked. This is the Radiant Palm. Heavens, he has actually grasped the Radiant Palm. The Radiant Palm is quite a powerful radiant arte. It's said that you need a 3-colored soul core at the very least to grasp it. What do you know? The Radiant Palm is even more profound than you imagine it to be. Those with 3-colored soul cores who can grasp the Radiant Palm are as rare as phoenix feathers. Most people can only grasp it with a 4-colored soul core. What? The Radiant Palm can only be grasped with a 4-colored soul core, yet Chang Yang can use it with a 1-colored soul core. Heavens, this is just too shocking. I can't believe this is real. Not only did Jianshan's Radiant Palm completely stun Bai Yu, but even the Radiant Saint Masters who had come from other peaks struggled to remain calm. They all cried out as they stared at Jianshan like they were looking at a monster. Wen Cheng's face had become extremely sunken as well. Hatred and jealousy coexisted in his eyes. Now, he was forced to accept a cruel reality. In just a few short weeks, Jianshan's strength had increased by an extremely obvious amount. At the very least, he still had not truly grasped the Radiant Palm. This Chang Yang really hasn't disappointed me. His talent really is monstrous. He's actually comprehended the radiant arts so quickly. I just wonder if he has gained a basic grasp of the other radiant arts I've taught him, Jianshan thought. At the top of the soaring cloud's peak, Han Xian smiled with relief. He was becoming more and more satisfied with his disciple. Jianshan ignored the cries in the surroundings. He looked at Shuafeng coldly and said, Shuafeng, you should understand now. You may be the first senior brother of the Soaring Clouds Peak, but you don't have the ability to tell me what to do. You can't beat Wencheng, but that doesn't mean I can't beat him. Afterwards, he ignored Shuafeng's ugly expression and looked at Wencheng. He sneered, Wencheng, looks like the slap I gave you before didn't hurt at all. Why don't we have another battle in the ring? I'll show everyone whether your defeat last time was intentional or whether you were just too weak. However, the price for your intentional defeat was a slap in the face. That's quite the price, Jianshan mocked. That's right. Wencheng, I remember that your entire face was smashed up by second senior brother. You even fainted from anger. Could this be fake as well? Baiyu also spoke in a timely manner. Her face was filled with seriousness. Wencheng's face paled from anger when he heard that. He immediately became furious, and his breathing became chaotic. He directly vomited blood from anger. This matter had already cast a shadow in his heart. It was a vicious wound, as well as the greatest humiliation of his life. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Now that Jianshan and Baiyu had mentioned it publicly, he immediately became furious. Chanyang, don't you dare speak nonsense. Wencheng immediately lost his composure. His face became vicious as he yelled at Jianshan crazily. Chapter 23-27. Wencheng's face immediately sank. Even though he was furious, he did not dare to actually agree. He had lost even more confidence after seeing Jianshan's radiant palm. If he were to lose again and be slapped down from the arena by another, then he would really have no face to continue living in this world. That's right. You two can fight in the ring again. Then you'll be able to tell whether Wencheng's defeat last time was intentional or not. At this moment, a pleasant laughter rang out. An alluring woman flew over from afar, directly flying onto the Soaring Clouds Peak. She stood near Jianshan. One of the 5 candidates, Donglin Yinshui. Why has she come? The woman's arrival immediately led to a series of cries. At that moment, everyone's gazes shifted from Wencheng and Jianshan to Donglin Yinshui. Their gazes intertwined with one another, revealing undisguised admiration and infatuation. Wencheng was stunned by Donglin Yinshui's arrival. He looked at Donglin Yinshui's divine beauty, and a sliver of very well-hidden admiration appeared in the depths of his eyes. However, when he thought of what Donglin Yinshui had said earlier, his face immediately became ashen. Why have you come? Jianshan also looked at Donglin Yinshui nearby and asked in surprise. Donglin Yinshui raised an eyebrow. What? Am I not welcomed on your Soaring Clouds Peak? Jianshan smiled bitterly. Who would dare to not welcome the 5 candidates? It's just that you've come at a rather bad time. Really? Donglin Yinshui declined to comment. She smiled gently. But I feel like I've come at the perfect time. Baiyu became stunned as she watched Jianshan and Donglin Yinshui converse as if they already knew each other. She really could not understand how her senior Chang Yang knew Donglin Yinshui, one of the 5 candidates. As for the outer disciples gathered outside the Soaring Clouds Peak, many of them who admired Donglin Yinshui had already become vicious. They glared at Jianshan like tigers. There was no lack of envy and jealousy in their eyes. Donglin Yinshui's arrival became the center of attention, attracting the attention of many powerful Radiant Saint Masters. Many Radiant Saint Masters with 4-colored, 5-colored, and even 6-colored soul cores who were watching from afar all moved out, gathering towards the Soaring Clouds Peak. These people had all come for Donglin Yinshui. Junior Apprentice Sister Yinshui, why are you here? Junior Yinshui, why are you standing on the Soaring Clouds Peak? With Junior Yinshui's identity and status, this tiny Soaring Clouds Peak is not worthy of you at all. Why don't you come to our Azure Cloud Peak? Junior Yinshui, if you don't mind, please come to our Thunder Roll Peak. Our Peak Lord has already prepared some aged wine. At that moment, many Radiant Saint Masters with 4-colored soul cores or higher all extended invitations to Donglin Yinshui. Jianshan immediately felt cold gazes from the Radiant Saint Masters from time to time, landing on him. He smiled bitterly inside. He really had no idea whether Donglin Yinshui's arrival was a blessing or a curse. At this moment, Donglin Yinshue looked at Wencheng and said calmly, Wencheng, what do you think of my earlier suggestion? You could spar with Chang Yang again, so that everyone can see whether your defeat last time was because of Jianshin's interference or if your strength really is inferior to Chang Yang's. Yeah, Wencheng, go spar with Chang Yang again. Defeat him in the ring and prove that you're telling the truth. In my opinion, this battle will probably be rather difficult. Haven't you seen that Chang Yang has already grasped the radiant palm? With that, the people gathered outside the soaring cloud's peak began to clamor as well. They wanted to see the world fall into chaos. Wei Wencheng's face turned the color of pig liver, standing there without saying a word. Donglin Yinshue, what are you doing here? At this moment, a cold snort rang out. The white-robed Jianshin had arrived as well. He hovered in the air as he stared at Donglin Yinshue and Jianshan coldly. It's young Master Jianshin. He's actually come as well. Heavens, I've actually seen young Master Jianshin. Young Master Jianshin sure is handsome. I've actually seen 2 of the 5 candidates that I rarely see. What day is it today? Gongjing Xian's arrival immediately caused cries of surprise to ring out. Many young and beautiful women even cast flirtatious glances at Gongjing Xian. They did not hide their adoration for him at all. Gongjing Xian was a 9-star genius, and he was one of the 5 prospective holy disciples. Coupled with his handsome face and extraordinary aura, many female disciples had already viewed him as their Prince Charming. They wanted nothing more than to throw themselves at him. What? You're the only one allowed to come, but I, Donglin Yinshue, can't come? As one of the 5 candidates, Donglin Yinshue showed no fear towards Jianshin at all. She said proudly, Donglin Yinshue, this has nothing to do with you. You better leave. Jianshin was emotionless. He could tell with a single glance that Donglin Yinshue stood on Jianshin's side. If she really wanted to interfere, it was extremely likely for her to ruin his plans. After all, with Donglin Yinshue's identity and status, she was completely capable of directly asking the Lord of the Sky Gazing Peak to find out the truth. She could do what Chang Yang could not. Afterwards, before Donglin Yinshue could say anything, Jianshin looked at Jianshin threateningly. He said condescendingly, Chang Yang, hand over the 1,000-leaf lotus, and I'll let bygones be bygones. Donglin Yinshue smiled mysteriously when she heard that. With a flip of her hand, she took out an item from her space ring and said to Jianshin, Is this the 1,000-leaf lotus you're talking about? To no surprise, the item in Donglin Yinshue's hand was the 1,000-leaf lotus that Jianshin had given to her. The appearance of the 1,000-leaf lotus immediately caused Jianshin's face to change slightly. He stared at the 1,000-leaf lotus in Donglin Yinshue's hand and growled, Why is the 1,000-leaf lotus in your hands? Obviously, I gave it to Senior Yinshue. Jianshin, do you have any objections? Jianshan directly called out his name without any respect. However, the 1,000-leaf lotus was bestowed to me by the Lord of the Sky, Gazing Peak, so I naturally have the right to decide how to use it. If I don't want to give it to you, you won't be able to get what you want from me even if you try to scheme against me. Jianshan stared right at Jianshin. He did not care about his identity as a candidate at all. He continued, Jianshin, you may be one of the candidates of the Radiant Saint Hall, but a candidate is still a candidate after all. Others might show you respect in the Radiant Saint Hall, but if you don't know when to stop and push people around, you'll only end up shooting yourself in the foot. Chapter 23-28. A puny Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core actually dared to go against the candidate in public. Many people secretly admired him for his boldness, and many people began to view him in a new light. However, there were also people who took pleasure in Jianshin's misfortune. They all believed that his days were numbered after offending the candidate. Chang Yang, you're very good. I've remembered everything you've said. Jianshin's face was terrifyingly sunken as he stressed every single word. Killing intent filled his eyes. Senior Yinshue, Jianshin colluded with Wencheng and used the battle to slander me in an attempt to obtain the 1,000-leaf lotus from the Lord of the Sky Gazing Peak. As for the right and wrong of this matter, I'm afraid that other than the sky-gazing peak master, no one else can produce strong evidence to prove this matter and prove my innocence. With my status, meeting the peak lord of the sky-gazing peak is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. As a result, I'd like to ask Senior Yinshue to make a trip for me and verify with the peak lord of the sky-gazing peak. Afterwards, I'll announce the results to everyone so that everyone can see whether the reward I received from defeating Wen Cheng in the ring was really due to Gongjing Xian's help. Jianchun said to Donglin Yinshue. His indifferent voice rang out without any restraint. Donglin Yinshue giggled. She glanced at Jianchun deeply and said, "It looks like I'll obviously help you prove your innocence for the sake of the thousand-leaf lotus." Good. Very good. Jianxin's face paled in the air. He glared at Jianshun through gritted teeth before turning around and leaving. He knew that with Donglin Yinshue standing on Jianxin's side, there was nothing he could do to Jianxin. Moreover, Jianshun did not seem to revere him as much as the other disciples, so there was no point in staying any longer. Once Gongjing Xian left, Wen Cheng and the black-clothed man, who had seen the situation clearly, would naturally not stay behind. They left the soaring clouds peak in dejection without a word. At the same time, Xian Bin stood with his hands behind his back on a mountain peak in the distance. He observed the situation on the soaring clouds peak from afar. I never thought that Chang Yang would actually give the thousand-leaf lotus to Donglin Yinshue. Since the thousand-leaf lotus has ended up in Donglin Yinshue's hands, it's basically impossible to take it back. But that's fine too. Donglin Yinshue is the weakest. Even if she obtains the thousand-leaf lotus, it won't give her a great advantage in the competition for the position of chosen saint. As long as Jianxin and Enshurta don't obtain it, it won't affect her too much, Xian Bin murmured to himself. Xian Bin muttered to himself. He was rather satisfied with this result. Soon after, he left on Saint Light. Now that the matter of the thousand-leaf lotus had come to an end, the radiant Saint Masters from the various mountains all extended invitations to Donglin Yinshue again. For a moment, the soaring clouds peak bustled with activity again. However, Donglin Yinshue declined all of their warm invitations without any hesitation. After an entire incense stick's worth of time, the radiant Saint Masters gathered on the soaring clouds peak all returned to their respective mountains. The noisy soaring clouds peak finally returned to its usual peace. Senior Changyang, when did you get to know Senior Yinshue? Why haven't I heard you mention her before? As soon as the soaring clouds peak fell silent, Baiyu arrived beside Jianxin. She pulled on Jianxin's arm intimately. Zhuofeng, on the other hand, stood silently in the distance with a sunken face. He glanced past Donglin Yinshue and Jianxin as flames of jealousy burned in the depths of his eyes. God damn it. How did Senior Yinshue get to know Changyang? How did the two of them get to know each other? Zhuofeng thought to himself secretly through gritted teeth. He admired Baiyu, while Donglin Yin had already become a goddess in his heart. She was an existence that he could only look up to and not approach. However, Donglin Yinshue, the goddess in his heart, whom he could only look up to, was actually acquainted with Jianxun. Moreover, she had even spoken up for Jianxun regardless of the consequences of offending Gongjing Xian, which made Zhuofeng feel very uncomfortable. Junior sister, I'll explain this to you in the future. I have something to discuss with Senior Yinshue right now, so you can go back first, Jianxun said to Baiyu. Baiyu immediately wrinkled her nose, unhappily. She snorted gently. Senior brother, you still have to pass on your comprehension of the laws of the hallowed to me, and you have to teach me how to use the radiant palm. All right. I'll definitely teach you in the future. It's just that I really have something to do right now. Jianxin smiled. He had truly accepted Baiyu in his heart, treating her as his junior sister. He cared for her in every possible way. Senior Changyang, that's what you said. I'll come find you tomorrow. You have to teach me everything you know. Baiyu glanced at Donglin Yinshue before leaving by herself. Zhuofeng naturally did not need Jianxin's reminder. After Baiyu left, he glanced at Donglin Yinshue, who had no intentions of leaving, with mixed feelings. He walked far away by himself with mixed feelings. However, he did not go too far away. Instead, he stopped far enough away from Jinshin's dwelling and secretly observed the situation in Jinshin's dwelling. To be more precise, he was paying attention to the relationship between Donglin Yinshui and Jinshin. Changyang, it looks like this senior of yours is quite concerned about you, Donglin Yinshui said mysteriously. Clearly, she had sensed Zhuo Feng's secret observation as well. Jinshin shook his head with a bitter smile. He did not explain and said, "Tell me, why have you come all the way from the Myriad Flowers Peak?" Donglin Yinshui glanced at Jinshin deeply and said, "It's said that you have some accomplishments in the usage and control of Radiant Saint Force. I've come to find you this time for this. You want me to pass on the usage of Radiant Saint Force to you?" Jinshin looked at Donglin Yinshui in surprise. Donglin Yinshui shook her head gently and corrected him, "I'm not passing it on. I'm exchanging it with you." Jinshin nodded in understanding. He smiled. "Not everyone can learn my method. It'll probably be very difficult for you to gain anything from me. If even you can do it with a one-colored soul core, why can't I do it with a four-colored soul core?" Donglin Yinshui declined to comment. "All right, I agree. However, before that, I need you to visit the sky-gazing peak for me and obtain some evidence regarding the thousand-leaf lotus from the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak. I think the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak will show you some respect with your identity as the candidate." Donglin Yinshui was surprised when she heard that. She stared at Jinshin seriously and asked, "Are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious. Jinshin has targeted me time and time again. If I don't fight back, people will think I'm easy to bully. This time, once I obtain the evidence, I will make Jinshin lose all face." Jinshin's face sank as a vicious gleam of light flashed through his eyes. Donglin Yinshui's face froze. She stared at Jinshin's ordinary face seriously as if she had just met Jinshin. A while later, Donglin Yinshui nodded solemnly and said sternly, "All right, I'll go to the sky-gazing peak right now. However, I hope you can consider the consequences of doing this carefully. Jinshin's background is not as simple as Wencheng's." With that, Donglin Yinshui directly made her way to the sky-gazing peak. Chapter 23-29. Very soon, Donglin Yinshui returned. She returned to the soaring clouds peak with a crystal that recorded her conversation with the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak. "Take it. I brought it back for you." Donglin Yinshui passed the crystal to Jinshin and continued, "It looks like even the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak can't accept some of Jinshin's actions. When I asked the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak about the thousand-leaf lotus, he clearly knew that I was secretly recording it, but he did not stop me. As a result, the evidence to prove your innocence came extremely easily. Jinshin accepted the crystal and immediately sent the senses of his soul into it. The figures of Donglin Yinshui and the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak immediately appeared before his eyes. Jinshin even heard their conversation clearly. The disciple of the soaring clouds peak, Changyang, only had a one-colored soul core, but his usage of Radiant Saint Force left even me sighing in amazement. After he defeated Wen Cheng, who was much more powerful than him, I decided to bestow the thousand-leaf lotus to Changyang on a whim. Peak Master, could it be that the thousand-leaf lotus isn't a reward for the victors? Of course not. Bestowing the thousand-leaf lotus to Changyang was just a whim on a whim. With just a few words, the Lord of the Sky-gazing peak completely disconnected the matter of the thousand-leaf lotus from Jinshin. Jinshin withdrew the senses of his soul from the crystal. He gripped the crystal tightly as his lips gradually curled into a sneer. He wanted to see what Jinshin had to say once the contents of the crystal were revealed to everyone. Jinshin, this time, I'll definitely embarrass you, Jinshin thought. I've already taken care of your matter. Now, shouldn't you consider my matter? Donglin Yinshui said. Jinshin nodded. With a flip of his hand, the crystal that recorded his innocence vanished. He glanced at where Zhuo Feng was hiding very casually before inviting Donglin Yinshui. He directly made his way to his dwelling. Donglin Yinshui immediately became stunned when she saw Jinshin enter his dwelling. The light in her eyes flickered as she hesitated. However, in the end, she still made up her mind and entered Jinshin's dwelling. Senior Yinxue has actually entered Chang Yang's dwelling. How is that possible? Zhuo Feng's face was filled with shock when he saw this clearly from afar. The flames of jealousy in his eyes were almost about to burst. Just what's so good about Chang Yang? First it was Junior Baiyu, and now it's Senior Yinxue. In particular, Senior Yinxue is a resplendent pearl of the Radiant Saint Hall. God damn it! Zhuo Feng's face twisted. Baiyu is not a big deal, but Donglin Yinxue was a goddess to him. She was sacred and inviolable. However, the goddess in his heart did not care at all, entering Jinshin's dwelling. Zhuo Feng was utterly furious. At that moment, Zhuo Feng was tempted to become Jinshin. At this moment, Jinshin and Donglin Yinxue sat before each other in the simple dwelling that belonged to Jinshin. A ball of milky white radiant Saint Force shone with a gentle white light in Jinshin's hand. It constantly leapt about on his fingertips like a lively elf. Radiant Saint Force is like my arm, my body, or even a part of my soul. As long as it exists in the world, I can establish a wondrous connection with it and control it. I can make it change according to my will. Watch closely. Jinshin was focused and serious. The Radiant Saint Force seemed to be alive in his hand, constantly changing into various forms and moving according to his will. With a single thought, it would turn into a radiant sword, and in the next moment, it would turn into a radiant shield. There were no gaps at all. It was as if his control over Radiant Saint Force was truly limitless. Donglin Yinxue was completely focused on watching Jinshin's actions. She would close her eyes to comprehend the Radiant Saint Force from time to time, and she would control the Radiant Saint Force from time to time, experimenting with various things. In the end, Donglin Yinxue had to admit that her cultivation was indeed much greater than Jinshin's, but she was nowhere near as good as him when it came to controlling and using Radiant Saint Force in a miraculous manner. As a matter of fact, Donglin Yinxue failed to gain a foothold even after many attempts. However, Donglin Yinxue did not become dejected at all. She was not afraid of failure. She constantly tried and tested, and in the end, she slowly discovered a new way of using Radiant Saint Force through her own talent. Although her method of using Radiant Saint Force was nowhere close to Jinshin's, it allowed her usage of Radiant Saint Force to reach a whole new level. Donglin Yinxue seemed to be intoxicated. She was completely submerged in the process, forgetting about time. She would frequently test and test Jinshin, exchanging experiences and making up for her flaws. Gradually, her method of controlling Radiant Saint Force became more and more perfect. Jinshin benefited quite a lot from Donglin Yinxue as well. Through the tests and interactions with Donglin Yinxue, he managed to touch upon an even higher level of the laws of the Hallowed. At the same time, he gained a vague understanding of the four-colored soul core through Donglin Yinxue. It could be said that Donglin Yinxue was not the only one who benefited from the exchange this time. The two of them had benefited as well. Unknowingly, half a month had already passed since Donglin Yinxue had entered Jinshin's dwelling. During this half a month, rumors about Chang Yang and Donglin Yinxue spread through the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone knew about it. First, it was the inside story of Chang Yang defeating a three-colored soul core with a one-colored soul core, as well as the fake agreement between him and Jinshin. Under the propaganda of some people, it spread across the mountains, causing many disciples to feel disdain. But very soon, the matter was suppressed as Donglin Yinxue stayed in Chang Yang's dwelling for a while. Many Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall guessed at the relationship between Donglin Yinxue and Chang Yang enthusiastically. For a time, rumors sprang up everywhere. At the same time, many of the Radiant Saint Masters who admired Donglin Yinxue were angered. All of them gathered on the Soaring Clouds Peak, forcing the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Exine, to personally come out and seal off the Soaring Clouds Peak, forbidding anyone from entering. Many of the Radiant Saint Masters were disciples of elders, descendants of elders, and so on. All of them worked together to pressure Han Exine, causing him to face great pressure as well. Only when Donglin Xiushui the lord of one of the 99 main peaks, arrived, did the radiant Saint Masters with impressive statuses settle down. Half a month later, Donglin Yin Shui finally emerged from Jinshan's dwelling. However, as soon as she emerged, Donglin Yin Shui became stunned. Her face was filled with shock. The protective formation of the Soaring Clouds Peak had already been activated. All the radiant Saint Masters gathered in the sky, blocked by the formation. Near Jinshan's dwelling, the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, and the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, Donglin Xiushui, stood side by side. They both stared at Donglin Yinshui. "Auntie, why have you come?" Donglin Yinshui could tell with a single glance that Donglin Xiushui had been waiting here for a long time. When she thought about how she had spent half a month in Chang Yang's dwelling, Donglin Yinshui immediately became rather unnatural. "Girl, why don't you pay attention to your surroundings? If I hadn't come, would you have been able to cultivate here peacefully for half a month?" Donglin Xiushui glared at Donglin Yinshui and scolded her. "But I must say that you haven't come for nothing. Although Chang Yang's strength is nothing special, his understanding of Radiant Saint Force is quite unique. You've benefited quite a lot from your interaction with him," continued Donglin Xiushui. "Auntie, already know?" Chapter 23:30. Donglin Xiushui personally left with Donglin Yinshui. None of the Radiant Saint Masters gathered outside the Soaring Clouds Peak dared to stop them. As a matter of fact, many of them even looked at Donglin Xiushui in fear. However, these Radiant Saint Masters showed no fear at all when they faced the Soaring Clouds Peak. After Donglin Xiushui and Donglin Yinshui left, many Radiant Saint Masters immediately looked at Jinshan. Their eyes were filled with coldness, and they were hostile. "Changyang, it's best if you maintain some distance from Donglin Yinshui. Donglin Yinshui's identity is anything but simple. She's a direct descendant of the Donglin clan. The difference in status between the two of you is just far too great. Moreover, there are quite a few people pursuing her in the Radiant Saint Hall. All the people who are bold enough to pursue Donglin Yinshui have great backgrounds and shocking origins. It'll be very bad for you if you get too close to her." Han Xian arrived beside Jinshan and advised him sincerely. "I understand. Thank you for your reminder, teacher." Jinshan clasped his fist at Han Xian. After watching Han Xian leave, he turned around and returned to his dwelling. Due to the sealing of the Soaring Clouds Peak, none of the high-level Radiant Saint Masters gathered outside the Soaring Clouds Peak took a single step in. Naturally, Han Xian's actions had offended many people. Many high-level Radiant Saint Masters became displeased. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak sure is haughty. He actually dares to shut us out like that. This Han Xian seems to be a member of the Han family of the Eastern region. He's just a nameless pawn of the Han family. Perhaps not many people in the Han family know about his existence. The group of high-level Radiant Saint Masters all dispersed as they discussed. Before long, the Soaring Clouds Peak finally returned to peace. In the following period of time, Jinshan entered long-term seclusion. Other than going to the top of the mountain from time to time to listen to Han Xian's teachings, he spent all his time cultivating in his dwelling. He had benefited quite a lot from his conversation with Donglin Yinshui. He had gained a new understanding of Radiant Saint Force, so he needed time to properly tidy it all up. Bai was the same as before. She basically visited Jinshan's dwelling every day to listen to Jinshan's comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed. Jinshan slowed down, only explaining the laws of the Hallowed to Bai for an hour each day. However, even with that being the case, Bai would enter a state to comprehend for several hours. 2. Of course. Just like that, half a month later, Bai finally broke through in her dwelling on the night of a full moon. She successfully comprehended the laws of the Hallowed with her two-colored soul core, becoming a Hallowed Saint Master gloriously. Not only did Bai's breakthrough alarm Han Xian, but it also alarmed the Sacred Hall. The next morning, an elder descended on the Soaring Clouds Peak and took Bai into the Sacred Hall to cultivate. At the same time, the matter spread across the entire Radiant Saint Hall, causing all the disciples to remember the name Bai. It was not that there were no hallowed Saint Masters with two-colored soul cores in the Radiant Saint Hall, but they were as rare as phoenix feathers. Every single one of them would receive great nurturing from the Radiant Saint Hall, becoming the elites of the elites. As a matter of fact, without any exaggeration, once a hallowed Saint Master with a two-colored soul core, their status in the Radiant Saint Hall would be no different from the 5 candidates. After Baiyu entered the Sacred Hall, Zhuofeng became rather dispirited. He had always admired Baiyu, and he was extremely confident that he could win her heart. This was because not only was he a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core, but he was also a 5-star genius. Compared to Baiyu, who was a 1-star genius, he felt a natural sense of superiority. However, all of this changed after Baiyu comprehended the laws of the Hallowed and was personally taken into the Sacred Hall by an elder. As soon as the disturbance with Baiyu settled, Jianshun finally took action. He made many copies of the conversation between Donglin Yin Shui and the Lord of the Sky Gazing Peak and secretly distributed them. Now, basically all the Radiant Saint Masters believed that Jianshun had defeated Wen Sheng with a 3-colored soul core because of Jianshun's secret arrangements. That was why he had obtained the final victory and made a name for himself. As a reward, he gave the 1,000-leaf lotus to Jianshun. However, after Jianshun obtained victory, he publicly broke the agreement he had secretly reached with Jianshun. He was unwilling to give the 1,000-leaf lotus to Jianshun. Instead, he gave it to Donglin Yin Shui, who was also one of the 5 candidates. As a result, not only did he become closer to Donglin Yin Shui, but he also obtained Donglin Yin Shui's protection. As a result, Jianshun was unable to do anything to him. Because of this matter, Jianshun's reputation in the Radiant Saint Hall became very bad. Basically, everyone would talk about Changyang with deep disdain and mockery, which led to a lot of curses. Now that the contents of the crystal had been announced to everyone, the truth that exceeded everyone's expectations and overturned everyone's understanding naturally spread without any concealment. It immediately led to a great uproar, causing quite a stir. Even a few high-level Radiant Saint Masters began to pay attention to the matter. If it were just 2 low-level Radiant Saint Masters, it would not have caused such a stir. However, the matter directly involved a candidate with the greatest status in the Earth Saint world. Jianshun, who was about to enter seclusion in the Sacred Hall for his final push, received the news as well. His face immediately became extremely ugly as heavy killing intent filled his eyes. Keep an eye on Changyang. Once he leaves the Radiant Saint Hall, immediately inform the clan to kill him. Jianshun said coldly. Yes, I'll contact the clan right away. A violet robe guard behind Jianshun said politely. In the blink of an eye, a year had already passed. During that year, Jianshun did not take a single step out of the soaring cloud's peak. He remained in seclusion, basically spending all his time on cultivation. Without Baiyu's disturbance, Jianshun finally had a period of peace. On this day, Jianshun suddenly roused from his cultivation. He raised his head and glanced at the sky before making his way out of his dwelling. He stared at the distant horizon. In the distant horizon, a door suddenly opened in the protective formation around the Radiant Saint Hall. Afterwards, a figure stepped through the air and directly entered the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. This figure exuded a terrifying aura that shook the heavens and the earth, causing the mountains to tremble. Countless plants and trees bent down from the pressure, as if they were submitting to this person. The person strolled through the air as if he was chasing after the stars. He crossed a huge distance in a single instance and arrived in the Sacred Hall in the clouds with just a single step. Jianshun became stern as he watched the figure vanish from the Sacred Hall. He had an ill omen. He felt like the person's arrival had something to do with him. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, who possessed supreme authority, and the 8 vice leaders who were only second to the leader gathered in a majestic discussion hall on the highest floor of the Sacred Hall. They were all stern. A gray-robed, middle-aged man stood in the center of the hall with his hands behind his back. He was composed as he stared at the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, who sat on the throne. I've only come here to pass on an agreement that we've all reached. I hope your Radiant Saint Hall will open the gates so that we can search this place freely and not keep the protective formation on all the time. The gray-robed man said emotionlessly. That's impossible. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall turned him down without any hesitation as he shone with a sacred light. The gray-robed man smiled indifferently. Leader, I think you understand that we're only doing this to search for Jinshin. We definitely won't do anything that will harm the interests of your Radiant Saint Hall. You must cooperate. In reality, it's not just your Radiant Saint Hall. We've even sent people to all the other peak organizations on the desolate plain to negotiate with them. We want them to open their gates and not get in the way of our search for Jinshin. Jinshin possesses the Inata Tower. That belongs to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. We're only doing this to serve the Heavenly Palace of Bishing and to share the burden of Her Majesty. If you don't cooperate, wouldn't you be going against Her Majesty? The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall could not help but become stern when he heard the mention of Her Majesty. The first Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, Exant, was in existence only second to Grand Exalts. She was one of the few supreme experts in the current Saints world. Her name was a great deterrent to many peak organizations in the Saints world. Our Radiant Saint Hall is filled with Radiant Saint Masters. As a fighter, Jinshin can hide anywhere on the desolate plain, but it's impossible for him to hide in our Radiant Saint Hall because there's nowhere for him to hide here. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall said sternly. Jinshin is nowhere near as simple as you imagine him to be. So many peak experts have tried to divine his whereabouts time and time again, using various secret techniques to search for him, but it's all to no avail. He possesses such impressive concealment methods. Even if he really is hiding within the territory of your Radiant Saint Hall, you might not be able to find him. Now, we've basically searched through the entire desolate plain. Aside from the peak clans on the desolate plain, we haven't missed a single corner. We've sent people to guard the teleportation formations in outer space on the desolate plain, so it's impossible for Jinshin to leave the desolate plain. We can already confirm that Jinshin is hiding in your peak organizations. The gray-robed man stared at the leader with shining eyes as he waited for his reply. Chapter 23:31. If that's the case, thank you for your cooperation, leader. Farewell. The gray-robed man clasped his fist before turning around and leaving. These people have gone too far. Do they really think they're the sovereigns of the world? They can actually do whatever they want on the desolate plain. Humph. The desolate plain is our territory. Now, we've actually allowed these outsiders to run amok in the desolate plain. They've basically turned the entire desolate plain upside down. This is truly a humiliation to us, the native organizations of the desolate plain. What's even worse is that they want our Radiant Saint Hall to open our doors and let them search as they please. Humph. What do they take our Radiant Saint Hall for? Although our Radiant Saint Hall has declined, we're still a peak organization that once gave birth to a Grand Exalt. How can we allow these outsiders to do whatever they want? These outsiders are just too lawless. After the gray-robed man's departure, the 8 vice leaders all roared out furiously. Their faces were all very ugly. They were extremely sunken. Sigh. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall sighed gently. His voice was filled with powerlessness as he said steadily, "These outsiders used the Heavenly Palace of Bishing's name. Let alone our Radiant Saint Hall, even the other organizations on the desolate plain probably won't dare to turn them down. This is because once we turn them down, let alone offending the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, these outsiders will even misunderstand that we're purposefully protecting Jinshin. Some people with ulterior motives might even accuse us of trying to take the Inata Tower for themselves. Once such a crime is confirmed, the consequences will be much more serious. Open the protective formations and let these outsiders search our Radiant Saint Hall. However, we can't let them do whatever they want here. As a result, no one is allowed to enter seclusion, including me. At the same time, get all the elders to emerge from seclusion and keep a close eye on these outsiders. Once they do anything out of line in our Radiant Saint Hall, we'll immediately deal with them according to the rules of our Radiant Saint Hall. Our Radiant Saint Hall can let them search for Jinshin's whereabouts, but we can't let them do whatever they want." "Yes, Palace Master." The 8 Vice Palace Masters replied in unison. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall continued. The Inita Grand Exalt has 3 great treasures, which are the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, the Inita Tower, and the Fortune Jade Seat. Since the Inita Tower is with Jianshin, once an organization finds Jianshin and obtains the Inita Tower and offers it to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, it will be a great contribution. At the same time, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall paused before continuing. In the past few years, due to the existence of that mysterious expert, our Radiant Saint Hall hasn't produced a late Divine King disciple for far too long. As a result, the lords of the various peaks who could have broken through long ago had no choice but to suppress their cultivation to mid-Divine King. They didn't dare to take another step forward. Even a few disciples who were unable to suppress their cultivation and had reached late Divine King were forced to leave the Radiant Saint Hall in the end, finding a place to hide themselves. However, none of the disciples who left have returned. I wonder if they're still alive. If this continues, our Radiant Saint Hall will definitely decline. As a result, our Radiant Saint Hall needs to search for the Inita Tower with everything we have. Once we find the Inita Tower first, our Radiant Saint Hall will no longer need to fear the mysterious expert. The eyes of the 8 Vice Palace Masters lit up when they heard that. They all said, that's right. Once we obtain the Inita Tower, we can ask the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to personally take action and kill the mysterious expert. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing is the most terrifying figure in the world. In the past, even the Grand Prime Flame Reverend, who was one of the strongest below Grand Exalts, was forced to flee across the entire Saint's world. In the end, he was forced to hide. The mysterious expert who specifically targets our Divine King is very powerful. But is he more powerful than the Grand Prime Flame Reverend? This is indeed an opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall. Vice Palace Master, let me go out personally and see if I can find Jianshin's traces. I'll go find Jianshin as well. After all, he's connected to the future of our Radiant Saint Hall. Immediately, 2 Vice Palace Masters volunteered to search for Jianshin. Even though all of them knew that Jianshin would not be found so easily since he could evade the pursuit of so many peak experts in the Saint's world, they still could not help but want to try their luck. On that day, the protective formations that enveloped the entire Radiant Saint Hall vanished. Everything within the Radiant Saint Hall was completely exposed to the eyes of outsiders. Without the obstruction of the formations, the powerful senses of the souls of the outsiders immediately shot over. They enveloped the Radiant Saint Hall with an extremely powerful pressure. They did not miss a single spot, searching through the countless mountains of the Radiant Saint Hall in an inch-by-inch manner. They even reached deep underground. Even the secret rooms deep underground failed to escape the senses of their souls. On that day, all the disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall stayed within their respective mountains. Under the restrictions of the Peak Lords, they all stayed within their own mountains. All of them could sense the suffocating senses of the souls roaming around them. Immediately, many of the confused Radiant Saint Masters fell silent out of fear. They all felt fearful and uneasy. Jianshin sat on a rock outside his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak. He could clearly sense the extremely powerful senses of the souls roaming around him, which made his heart sink. Jianshin truly felt a sense of danger when the Radiant Saint Hall opened its doors to the outsiders. Fortunately, I have a mask Senior Mo Tianyan gave me. With the mask, I don't have to worry about the senses of the souls of these peak experts seeing through my identity, let alone the senses of their souls. Even if I stood before them, they probably wouldn't be able to see through my original appearance. However, there are no absolute secrets in the world. If they investigate me one by one, they'll discover that there's something wrong with me sooner or later. As a result, my true identity will be exposed sooner or later. My final objective in coming to the Radiant Saint Hall is to enter the Tower of Radiance and obtain the cultivation methods left behind by the past experts of the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, I can't leave before I enter the Tower of Radiance, or everything will be for naught, Jianshin thought. He knew that this was the only chance he had to enter the Tower of Radiance. Once his identity was exposed beforehand, it would mean that he would not be able to hide his ability to use martial soul force. He would immediately become an enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, and it would be impossible for him to enter the Tower of Radiance again. Activate the protective formations. All the disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak come out for inspection. At this moment, a cold voice rang out from outside the Soaring Clouds Peak. 2 violet-robed guards arrived outside the Soaring Clouds Peak with a few men who seemed to be outsiders. They hovered in the air quietly. Jianshan looked at them as he sat on the rock on the Soaring Clouds Peak. Even though his face remained the same as before, he seemed rather doubtful on the surface, but his heart became heavier and heavier. Zhuofeng, Changyang, the 2 of you come to me. At this moment, Han Xian's voice rang out from the top of the mountain. Afterwards, the protective formations around the Soaring Clouds Peak gradually vanished as well. Jianshan immediately stood up from the rock and flew towards the top of the mountain. Very soon, he arrived at the top of the Soaring Clouds Peak. He discovered that the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, was currently conversing with the 2 violet-robed guards. Zhuofeng had already arrived behind Han Xian. Under the leader's orders, all the disciples of the various peaks, including the Lord of the Peak, need to be inspected, a violet-robed guard said to Han Xian emotionlessly. Han Xian nodded. I've already received the Elder's message. I will cooperate with you as much as I can. The violet-robed guard nodded before taking out a mirror. He pointed it at Han Xian. Immediately, a resplendent streak of light shot out and enveloped Han Xian. Clearly, the mirror was anything but ordinary. It could pierce through illusions and see through reality. Through it, one could see through all concealment methods. Jianshan, who stood to one side, could clearly sense that the powerful senses of the soul above the Radiant Saint Hall all gathered over when the light from the mirror enveloped Han Xian. They all gathered on the mirror. All right, there's no problem. Next. Very soon, the light from the mirror vanished. The violet-robed guard aimed the mirror at Zhuofeng and also shot out a streak of light that enveloped Zhuofeng. In the end, it was Jianshan's turn. Jianshan knew that the senses of the souls of many experts were paying attention to everything that happened here, so his expression remained the same. He faced the mirror's inspection extremely calmly and did not reveal anything at all. The mask that Mo Tianyun had left him could even fool the senses of the souls of many peak experts. He refused to believe that a tiny mirror would be able to see through his true identity. No problem. Let's go to the next peak. Very soon, the light from the mirror vanished, and the violet-robed guard stowed the mirror away. He turned around and left with the other people. Clearly, the mirror was not enough to see through the mask that Mo Tianyun had left behind. There was not just a single search party like this. There were over a dozen search parties in various places of the Radiant Saint Hall, both the inner and outer mountains. Under the accompaniment of some foreign cultivators, they roamed the various peaks with the same mirror. From the peak lords to the new disciples, they all had to undergo the inspection of the mirror. Chapter 23:32. He could not help but show admiration as he said, Senior Jianshan is indeed extremely impressive. It's rumored that Senior Jianshan is only a divine king. He has already offended the renowned solitary sword ancestor and heavenly king of azure brilliance, and he has survived the pursuit of these 2 experts until now. Many peak experts from the outside world have gathered on the desolate plain now, yet Senior Jianshan is still able to remain undiscovered even under the search of these experts. Probably only Senior Jianshan can achieve such a shocking feat among the Divine King. After over a year of rumbling, some matters regarding Jianshan were no longer a secret on the desolate plain. It had become widespread, to the point where basically everyone knew about it. Zhuofeng naturally obtained the information from elsewhere. Jianshan felt extremely strange when he heard Zhuofeng praise him openly and refer to him as senior. He immediately looked at Zhuofeng with an extremely strange gaze. Zhuofeng seemed to sense Jianshan's gaze as well. His face immediately sank, and he glanced at Jianshan coldly. He snorted coldly before looking away. However, what would he feel when he learned that the Changyang beside him was the senior Jianshan he had mentioned? After leaving the soaring cloud's peak, Jianshan returned to his dwelling. At this moment, he was no longer in the mood to continue cultivating. He sat on the cold ground and sank into his thoughts. Not only had the Radiant Saint Hall opened their doors, but they had even sent out their disciples to search every inch of the mountains for him. This was not good news for Jianshan. Moreover, he knew that the search today was only the beginning. As time went on, the search would become more and more thorough. It might even become watertight. Even though he had the mask that Imo Tanyan gave him, which allowed him to hide from the majority of magic treasures and secret techniques, this mask was not omnipotent. Once a small flaw was exposed, what awaited him was the consequence of his identity being exposed. It looks like it's no longer suitable for me to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall. It might be safer outside, thought Jianshan. There were still roughly 2 years until the competition between the Chosen Saint and the Radiant Saint Hall. He had to last for another 2 years no matter what. Once he entered the Tower of Radiance and obtained what he wanted, it would no longer matter if his identity was exposed. On the morning of the next day, a group of violet-robed guards flew down from the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. Afterwards, they dispersed and flew towards the mountains. They delivered crystals with some information to the peak lords of the Radiant Saint Hall before distributing them to the disciples below. Jianshan obtained a memory crystal from Han Xian. Looking at the thumb-sized memory crystal in his hand, Jianshan silently extended the senses of his soul to check the contents of the crystal. As expected, the memory crystal contained information about him. It was extremely detailed, including his appearance, the weapons he used, the laws he comprehended, the various battle skills and secret techniques he knew. Without any exaggeration, everything that Jianshan had revealed in the Tsang Poseidon Palace was recorded in detail. Not a single part of it was missing. As a matter of fact, there were even some descriptions of his profound sword chi. It was just a rather vague description. The memory crystal was a notice from the Radiant Saint Hall. It encouraged all the Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall to take part in the search for Jianshan. Clearly, the Radiant Saint Hall had taken part in the search for Jianshan as well. Jianshan's eyes shone brightly as he held the memory crystal. He just happened to be worried about finding a suitable reason to leave the Radiant Saint Hall. The memory crystal had come at the perfect time. Afterwards, Jianshan arrived at the top of the soaring cloud's peak with the memory crystal and found Han Xian. Zhuofeng, it's already extremely impressive that you can use Radiant Saint Force to such a level. Don't always compare yourself to your junior Changyang. Your junior brother's cultivation is indeed not as great as yours, but his usage and control of Radiant Saint Force is indeed quite talented. Not everyone can achieve that. Han Xian currently sat on a boulder as he explained the usage of Radiant Saint Force to Zhuofeng. When Jianshan arrived, Han Xian stopped. He looked at Jianshan and immediately smiled amiably. Changyang, what's the matter? Zhuofeng also discovered Jianshan's arrival. His eyes immediately became cold. Jianshan clasped his fist at Han Xian and said, "Teacher, I want to leave the mountain for a while and see if I can find traces of Jianshan." You're overestimating yourself. You want to find Senior Jianshan with just you? Why don't you take a look at yourself first? Senior Jianshan is the Divine King. Even if you really do manage to find him, it's impossible for you to survive. Zhuofeng retorted coldly before Han Xian could even reply. Zhuofeng. Han Xian's face sank slightly. He immediately called out, making Zhuofeng shut up obediently. Afterwards, he looked at Jianshan with a gentle gaze and shook his head. Changyang, listen to my advice. Cultivate properly on the soaring cloud's peak and strive to become a hallowed Saint Master with a 2-colored soul core like your junior sister. Don't get involved in the search for Jianshan. Even so many peak experts are unable to find any traces of Jianshan, so how can you find him so easily? If you get involved, you'll just be wasting your time. Teacher, searching for Jianshan is only one of the reasons. I also want to take a look outside and use the opportunity to train myself, Jianshan said. Han Xian fell silent for a while before nodding in agreement in the end. All right, Since you've already made up your mind, I won't stop you. Changyang, remember that you have to wear the uniform of a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall at all times when you're outside. The desolate plain is not peaceful, so it'll be extremely dangerous outside with your cultivation. The uniform of a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall is the best protection. After all, our Radiant Saint Hall is one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. Apart from the martial soul lineage, our Radiant Saint Hall has never fallen out with any other large organizations. As a result, very few people are bold enough to lay their hands on the disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall. This is the medallion of a disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Take it to the Foreign Affairs Hall to register, and then you can leave the Radiant Saint Hall. Take this jade talisman with you as well. If you come across any danger or trouble, crush it immediately. I will rush over as quickly as possible. Han Xian warned Jianshan several times before allowing Jianshan to leave. Afterwards, Jianshan registered himself in the Foreign Affairs Hall with the medallion of a disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. After going through several identity checks, he left the Radiant Saint Hall by himself. P.S. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing is a peak expert who could deter the experts of the Saint's world. Now, Xiaoyao has released the image of the First Majesty, Xian, on his public account. Brothers, do you want to know what Her Majesty, Xian, looks like? Please pay attention to Xiaoyao's prestigious public account, Xinxing Xiaoyao 110. Pinyin is the pseudonym of Xinxing Xiaoyao. There's also a number for the police, or you can directly search for Xinxing Xiaoyao on the public account. For those who don't know how to pay attention to public accounts, you can open the contact list of your public account. You'll see the menu for public accounts. You can click it, press the plus sign in the upper right corner, and then directly search for the public account mentioned above. Chapter 23:33. There were 49 great plains and 81 great planets in the Saint's world. The 49 great plains were actually 49 huge continents that floated in outer space. They were so large that they were larger than any single one of the 81 great planets. Among the 49 great plains, the 7 sacred plains stood at the top. Every single sacred plane possessed a grand exalt. Although grand exalts were still grand primes, they had reached the limits of grand primes. At the very least, they had comprehended one of their laws to perfection, becoming existences akin to the laws of the world. With a single thought, they could even interfere with the operation of the laws of the world and control it. As a result, if a grand exalt realm expert cultivated in a large plane for a long time, the great ways of the world of the plane would be affected by the will of the grand exalt. As a result, the complicated great ways of the world would become simple and clear, allowing people to comprehend the laws of the world with twice the result with half the effort. This was how the 7 sacred planes of the Saint's world got their name. The Prosper Plane was one of the 7 sacred planes of the Saint's world. In the past, one of the 7 sovereigns, the Anata Grand Prime, spent most of her time cultivating there. The Anata Grand Prime's residence, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, was located at the very center of the Prosper Plane. It was also the most sacred place on the entire Prosper Plane. It was worshipped and revered by everyone. Even though there were many peak organizations on the Prosper Plane and many supreme experts, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing was the organization that they could not afford to offend the most and could not afford to provoke. Although the 7 grand exalts had either died or been injured in the battle in the past, and even the master of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, the Anata Grand Prime, was rumored to have died many years ago, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing still had the Prosper Plane. As long as Xian remained, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing could continue to stand tall in the Saint's world. At the same time, it was because of Xian that the experts of the Prosper Plane dared not to act rashly. At this moment, the majestic Heavenly Palace of Bishing gave off a supreme presence that could shake up the world unknowingly in the sacred land at the very center of the Prosper Plane. It was like a primordial beast that lay there silently. A group of divine generals in golden armor stood there silently like statues. They did not move at all, protecting the Heavenly Palace of Bishing loyally. A travel-worn old woman stood near the entrance of the heavenly palace of Bishing. She bowed politely as she stood there. She seemed to have been standing here for a long time, causing a thin layer of dust to form on the plain clothes she was wearing. Serene, the Eighth Highness wants me to tell you that you will not be able to see the First Highness. It will be useless for you to continue waiting here. A divine general in golden armor walked out from the heavenly palace of Bishing and said to the old woman with mixed feelings, "I really do have something extremely important to report to the First Highness. If the First Highness really doesn't want to see an insignificant person like me, can I see the Eighth Highness?" Serene said bitterly. The divine general sighed gently when he saw how persistent Serene was. He said, "Then I'll pass on the message. As for whether the Eighth Highness is willing to see you or not, that'll be up to your luck." With that, the divine general turned around and made his way into the heavenly palace of Bishing. However, just when he turned around, he suddenly became stunned. A woman in a red dress, who only seemed to be in her 20s, slowly walked out from the entrance of the heavenly palace of Bishing. This woman was extremely beautiful. She was so beautiful that she could captivate the birds and beasts, overshadowing the moon and putting the flowers to shame. She walked over step by step, but there was not the slightest bit of aura emitted from her body. However, when the divine general saw the woman, he immediately became respectful. He clasped his fist and bowed in a hurry. "Greetings to the Eighth Highness." Junior Serene greets the Eighth Highness. Serene also bowed towards the woman in red with mixed feelings. The woman was the Eighth Highness of the heavenly palace of Bishing, Byrong. "You can go," Byrong said to the divine general. Byrong said to the divine general. Her voice was soft and gentle, but it was as beautiful as the heavens and very pleasant to the ears. "Yes, Eighth Highness." The divine general bowed politely before quickly vanishing from the heavenly palace of Bishing. Byrong arrived before Serene slowly. She stared at Serene's unfamiliar face that had become extremely old. She could still vaguely think of the beautiful girl she had seen for the first time several million years ago. She was extremely cautious and naive before her, which made Byrong sigh deeply inside. Byrong stared at Serene for a while before saying gently, "Serene, I already know why you've come. We've learned about Master's Tower a very long time ago. It's not something you should be concerned about, so there's no need for you to pay attention to it. Grandmaster's Inata Tower is in the hands of a junior called Jianshun. Jianshun is weak, so if the Inata Tower remains in his hands, it can be taken away by someone else at any time. As a result, I hope that the Inata Tower can be taken away as soon as possible, Eighth Highness," Serene pleaded. Byrong sighed gently when she heard that. She said, "Master has ordered us not to interfere with this matter. As a result, let alone me, even if you find first senior sister, it'll be useless." "What? This? Could this be the ancestor? The ancestor? The ancestor? The ancestor?" When he heard Byrong say, "Master's orders," Serene's expression immediately became stunned. A huge wave surged in his heart. "Do you understand now? This matter isn't something that disciples like us can decide." Byrong glanced at Serene deeply before turning around and leaving without saying anything more. She vanished into the heavenly palace of Bishing again. "Grandmaster is still alive. Grandmaster is actually still alive." Serene's head echoed with Byrong's words for a very long time. Her heart trembled as she struggled to calm down. At the same time, a hazy figure shrouded in a dense layer of light sat in the air within the heavenly palace of Bishing. The laws of the world clearly appeared around him, interweaving with one another and drawing out the truths of the world. The sound of laws boomed out. It was as if this person had already fused with the laws, representing the laws of the world. He was the supreme will of the world. Disciple EXIN greets Master. At this moment, a graceful woman in white appeared silently in front of the figure enveloped by the light of the way. She clasped her fist respectfully. This woman was the first majesty who had forcefully smashed through the formations of the Poseidon Palace and destroyed a clone of the samsaric immortal exalt soul. She was also the first majesty who had deterred all the experts in the saint's world, allowing the heavenly palace of Bishing to remain standing. Master, disciple has found Senior Gu Dao's one soul and 5 corpses, Xian said. At the same time, a few specks of light flew out from her hand. These specks of light varied in size. Some were souls, some were just hazy consciousnesses, and some were just imprints. Chapter 23:34. Master, may I ask where Senior Gu Dao's final soul is right now? The first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing asked politely. The hazy figure enveloped by the light of ways fell silent. However, the light of ways on him surged, becoming extremely dazzling. He was as resplendent as the sun. At this instant, he seemed to have transformed into the heavens and the earth. He controlled the grand Tao of the heavens and the earth, and he became the highest will in the heavens and the earth. With a single glance, he could clearly see the quintessence of the heavens and the earth, and he could clearly see through the past and future. Gu Dao's final soul possesses a sliver of his power of ways. Under the protection of the power of ways, even grand exalts will struggle to find him, the figure said after a moment of silence. After a while, the figure shrouded in the light of the great path spoke. His voice contained all the rhythms in the world, and it was impossible to determine his gender from his voice. Master, even you can't find Senior Gu Dao's final soul? Once my cultivation recovers completely, it won't be difficult for me to find Gu Dao's final soul. The War Dragon Empire was one of the 5 everlasting empires on the desolate plain. Their strength was on par with the Radiant Saint Hall, making them one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. At this moment, Jianshun wore the white robes of a Radiant Saint Master in the most sacred imperial city of the War Dragon Empire. He sat alone in an inconspicuous place and ordered a few dishes, eating and drinking leisurely. The small tavern was already full of guests at this moment, and the clamor spread to every corner of the tavern. A man's wealth is his own ruin. I've investigated this person called Jianshun carefully. It's said that he's very powerful. He's renowned in the Tsang Poseidon Palace. His battle prowess is extremely shocking, enough for him to stand before the Divine King. It's just a pity that he's been killed as soon as he left the Inata Tower. Now that the entire desolate plain has been sealed off, as long as Jianshun is still on the desolate plain, he won't be able to escape. I just don't know how long he can hide. Soon, as long as Jianshun is still on the barren state, it won't be long before he resurfaces. Right now, the search of the barren state by those external forces is getting more and more intense. But I have to say, this Jianshun is really good at hiding. Even with so many top experts searching for him, he can still hide until now. What kind of divine artifact is the Inata Tower? How can a puny divine king possess it? If Jianshun doesn't hand over the Inata Tower, his fate will be extremely miserable. He's made so many peak experts go through so much trouble, so he's probably already displeased many of them. I'm just afraid that he won't end up well even if he hands over the Inata Tower. The cultivators of various cultivation levels gathered in the tavern all discussed Jianshun with great interest. In reality, similar discussions did not only occur in the tiny tavern. They could be heard anywhere on the desolate plain. Not only did all the cultivators on the desolate plain remember Jianshun's name, but he had also become the topic of discussion. Jianshun sat there quietly in his robes. He listened to the various discussions that the people had about him like a guest. His mind did not waver at all. He remained as calm as usual. A while later, Jianshun tossed a few medium-grade divine crystals onto the table before standing up and leaving. He had already visited many places in the past few days, so he gained a rough understanding of the current situation on the desolate plain. What troubled him the most was that basically all the interplanar teleportation formations on the desolate plain had been sealed off. Without sufficient status, it was impossible for people to leave the desolate plain through the teleportation formations. Even the space beyond the desolate plain had been sealed off by many peak organizations. Spaceships had stopped operating, only allowing people to enter and not leave. In addition, everywhere on the barren state, there were many patrol squads patrolling. These patrol squads all possessed artifacts that could see through camouflage, so they would check all the people they met. Once the identity of these patrol squads aroused suspicion, these patrol squads would not hesitate to arrest them. In the beginning, there were naturally many cultivators who hid their identities on the desolate plain. For various reasons, they would resist as hard as they could, or even directly kill the groups. However, these people would often be suppressed the moment they moved. This was because behind these patrol squads, there were always top powerhouses paying attention to them. It was also because of that the patrol teams became more and more unbridled and fearless on the desolate plain. Even Jianshen had been stopped and questioned by the groups several times. However, as Jianshen was a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall, the groups only carried out routine checks. They did not make things too difficult for him. Clearly, these people were unwilling to provoke any of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. After leaving the tavern, Jianshen strolled through the bustling streets. He held the memory crystal that contained his detailed information as he acted like he was looking for Jianshen. He observed the people around him as he made his way out of the imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. Very soon, Jianshen arrived at the gates of the imperial capital. He shook his head in disappointment and murmured, "There's so many people here. It looks like finding Jianshen really won't be easy. I better go to the next city and try my luck." As he said that, Jianshen stowed the memory crystal away and left with radiant saint light. After Jianshen left, two middle-aged men walked over from behind at a steady pace. They looked in the direction that Jianshen had disappeared in and could not help but sneer. This Changyang sure is adorably silly. He wants to find Jianshen with his mere one-colored soul core. He's dreaming. He really is far too naive. However, he's finally left Dragon City. Let's go. Let's follow him. Once he leaves Dragon City, we'll take action immediately. I heard that Changyang's talent is extremely impressive. It's just a pity that he's recklessly offended young Master Xian. He's destined to die soon. As the two middle-aged men communicated with each other, they slowly rose into the air and made their way towards Jianshen at a steady pace. By now, Jianshen was already several million kilometers away from the imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. Just as he flew past a smelly swamp, the two middle-aged men appeared silently and blocked Jianshen's path. "Who are you?" Jianshen immediately became cautious. "You're Changyang, right? You don't need to know who we are. All you need to know is that you'll die very soon. Changyang, it's your fault for offending young Master Xian. Only death awaits you now that you've offended young Master Xian." Chapter 23:35. So you were sent by Jianshen. Tell me, what benefits did Jianshen give you? I can give you 10 times more. Jianshen remained composed. He said calmly, "You're working for Jianshen for cultivation resources. I can give you whatever Jianshen can give you, such as this divine hall." With a flip of his hand, Jianshen pulled out a palm-sized divine hall from his space ring. The two middle-aged men who wanted to kill Jianshen did not pay any attention to Jianshen's words in the beginning, but when they saw the divine hall in Jianshen's hand, their eyes narrowed. They became overjoyed. The 9th grade of the Truth Tier. It's actually a divine hall of the 9th grade of the Truth Tier. You actually have a treasure like that on you. The two middle-aged men were extremely shocked. The divine hall was an irresistible temptation to them. Immediately, their eyes burned with greed as they flew toward Jianshen as quickly as they could. They wanted to take the divine hall first. An undetectable sneer appeared on Jianshen's face as he watched the two middle-aged men scramble for the divine hall. In the next moment, a pair of huge hands suddenly extended out of the divine hall, reaching for them with an indescribable speed in the eyes of the two middle-aged men. The sudden change in situation caused the two middle-aged men's faces to drastically change. However, it was already too late. The hands that had extended from the divine hall grabbed their necks with lightning speed. Under the two middle-aged men's fearful gazes, they were forcefully dragged into the divine hall. Jianshen really thinks highly of me. He's actually sent 2 early divine king experts to deal with me, a one-colored soul core expert who's only equivalent to a receival expert. Jianshen sneered as he looked at the divine hall in his hand. Afterwards, he said to the divine hall, Heya, I'll leave the two of them to you. Jinshin's voice rang out clearly in the divine hall. Yes, master, Heya replied politely from within the divine hall. Master, I feel like I'm about to break through, Heya continued after a slight pause. About to break through? So soon? Jinshin was surprised. Once Heya broke through, he would directly reach the primordial realm. In the past, primordial realm experts were unreachable existences in his eyes. Now, one of his retainers was actually about to become a primordial realm expert, which made Jinshin sigh inside. It's all thanks to Master's Flower of Ways. If it weren't for the Flower of Ways and all the heavenly resources, it would have been impossible for me to reach the primordial realm so soon. Heiya's voice was filled with deep gratitude. After a moment of thought, Jinshin said, "The Divine Hall can't endure the disturbance from your breakthrough. The current situation is special, so it's not a good time for you to break through. Heiya, hold off on breaking through for now." "Yes, master." Afterwards, Jinshin checked the surroundings. After confirming that he had not left behind any traces, he was about to leave. However, at this moment, a trace of extremely obscure and mysterious aura suddenly came from the swamp under his feet. The presence was extremely obscure and extremely thin. If it were not for the fact that Jinshin's soul had fused with a strand of true chaotic force, which had changed drastically and made it extraordinarily powerful and sensitive, he would not have even been able to sense its existence. This was because it was just too obscure. It was so obscure that even the senses of the soul of a primordial realm expert were unable to sense it. Jinshin suddenly looked at the swamp below him. After a moment of hesitation, he dove in without any hesitation. A layer of milky white light formed a white barrier around him, completely enveloping him. The radiant force repelled the swamp around him, allowing Jinshin to dive down. As he rapidly dove, Jinshin became more and more surprised. The depths of the swamp had completely exceeded his imagination. He estimated that he had already dove several dozen kilometers at the very least, but he still had not reached the swamp. It was as if the ordinary-looking swamp could lead to the depths of the earth. The further down he dove, the greater the pressure from the surroundings became. In the end, Jinshin could no longer support himself with just Radiant Saint Force. Fortunately, he dismissed his Radiant Saint Force and did not use any other energy. He only used his body to endure the pressure from the swamp. Finally, after who knew how long, Jinshin's feet finally came into contact with tough ground after several tens of thousand kilometers. He had arrived at the very bottom of the swamp. The bottom of the swamp was a layer of extremely tough rock. Jinshin followed the senses of his soul and finally found the source of the mysterious presence nearby. It was actually a piece of rock that was over a meter wide. Jinshin expanded the senses of his soul in an attempt to investigate the inside of the rock. However, to his surprise, the rock that was clearly right before him did not exist at all. "I can't find it with the senses of my soul. I can only discover its existence with my eyes. This rock is not simple." Jinshin rubbed the rock gently. Afterwards, sword chi shot out from the tip of his finger. He scraped off a thin layer of powder from the surface of the rock before taking out the divine hall from his space ring. He smeared the powder on the divine hall as he thought. This powder should be able to hide the divine hall, preventing it from being sensed by experts. Very soon, the tiny divine hall was smeared with a thick layer of powder. With a thought, Jinshin vanished along with the rock. Only the powdered divine hall stood at the bottom of the swamp silently. Jinshin appeared silently with the rock in the divine hall. He cleaned off the mud around the rock and began to observe it carefully. The rock was square in shape. It was over a meter in length, width, and height. It was dark red in color and extremely tough. Even with Jinshin's current strength, he was unable to shatter it. On the surface, this piece of rock looked ordinary. Apart from the fact that it was so hard that divine sense couldn't detect it, there was nothing strange about it. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation of energy. However, from time to time, Jinshin would be able to vaguely sense a mysterious presence from the rock with the extraordinary senses of his mutated soul. He believed that other than himself, Even those top experts would not be able to sense this aura. Heya, do you recognize this? Jianshun called Heya over to identify it. However, Heya shook his head very soon. He had never seen or heard of such a strange rock either. Jianshun stared at the rock and pondered it for a while. In the end, he gritted his teeth and sword chi flickered at the tip of his finger. He cut off a thin piece of rock with great difficulty and studied it carefully in his hand. P.S. That's the second chapter. There's a third chapter today, but it'll probably be released a little later. Chapter 23:36. The rock was extremely strange. It was impossible to make out anything about it with the naked eye, while the senses of the soul were completely useless. As a result, Jianshun secretly used his soul that had fused with chaotic force. Through the unusual power of his soul, he carefully observed the tiny piece of rock in his hand. Very soon, he made an extremely shocking discovery. There was a tiny bit of the mysterious presence remaining in the tiny piece of stone. At that moment, the mysterious presence that remained in the piece of stone was vanishing at an extremely slow rate. When the mysterious presence dispersed to a certain extent, Jianshun discovered that his soul could actually vaguely sense the existence of the piece of rock. The tiny piece of rock could no longer hide from the senses of the soul. So that's how it is. The reason why the rock can hide from the senses of the soul is not because the rock itself is extraordinary. It's all because of the mysterious presence that fills the rock. Once I cut this piece of stone in my hand, the mysterious aura within it slowly dissipated. It seems that the source of this mysterious aura is hidden within this piece of rock, Jianshun thought. The light in his eyes flickered, and he immediately began to cut the rock. However, the rock was just too tough. The closer he got to the center, the tougher it became. Towards the end, Jianshun cut at an extremely slow rate, even with his full strength. Jianshun frowned when he saw this. Since he knew that the rock itself was not as extraordinary as he thought, it meant that the powder he had applied to the divine hull would not be able to hide it for long. Once the powder lost its effect, the peak experts gathered on the desolate plain would easily discover the divine hull that he had hidden at the bottom of the swamp. I don't have much time left. Jianshun scraped off some more powder and applied it around the divine hull again. Afterward, he drew the 9-star sword of heavenly ways decisively and carefully controlled the sword's energy to cut the rock layer by layer. A day later, Jianshun finally reached the very center of the rock after changing the powder several times. Immediately, an incomparably resplendent divine light shot out from within. It was brilliant, dazzling, and eye-catching, as if it was the most beautiful color in the world. Everyone who saw the divine light was mesmerized. Moreover, with the appearance of the resplendent light, a refreshing presence that could shake up the souls of people radiated out. The sound of the world boomed, and the 3,000 laws trembled. It seemed like endless mysteries were being revealed. Jianshun became stunned when he saw the familiar light. He stared at the piece of jade that shone with resplendent light that was hidden within the rock. His eyes were filled with great joy and disbelief. Fortune divine jade, this is the fortune divine jade, Jianshun murmured in a daze. At that moment, his heart churned. He was unable to remain calm at all. Great joy had filled his heart. He knew extremely well just how valuable fortune jade was. It was a supreme treasure in the world. He had also learned from the sword spirits that only the greatest expert of the immortals' world, the nirvanic immortal exalt, possessed a piece of fortune jade. It was not very large either, only a third of the size of the Inata, Grand Prime's fortune jade. Jianshun's breathing could not help but become ragged. He forcefully suppressed his excitement and continued to swing the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. He carefully controlled the sword's power to cut through all the rock around the fortune jade. Very soon, a complete piece of fortune jade appeared before Jianshun. It was so large that it was similar to the projection of the fortune jade he had seen on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower. The only difference was that the projection of the fortune jade he had seen on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower was circular, just like a cushion. However, the fortune jade before him was irregular in shape. It was the size of a millstone. With such a large piece of fortune jade, it's probably on par with the Inata, Grand Prime's piece. Jian Shun sighed. Jian Shun was unable to contain his excitement as he stared at the fortune jade before him. Afterwards, he seemed to think of something and immediately stowed the fortune jade away in a space ring. Afterwards, he left the divine hall and returned to the swamp. At that moment, he no longer cared about whether the presence of the Inata Tower would leak out or not. He directly took out the Inata Tower from the bottom of the swamp and tossed the fortune jade inside. In Jinshin's opinion, something as precious as the fortune jade could only be kept safe in the Inata Tower. He would never have dared to take out the Inata Tower anywhere else because the risk of being exposed would be even greater. Only here, with the natural environment, would it be safer. I hope the presence of the Inata Tower won't leak out, Jinshin prayed. Even though he had concealed the presence of the Inata Tower as much as he could, Jinshin was not completely confident. After all, the peak experts were all extremely powerful, far beyond what Jinshin could understand. Suddenly, Jinshin's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly looked to the side as a gleam of light flickered through his eyes. He pushed the power of his soul to the limit. He actually discovered an extremely well-hidden concealment formation there. This is a natural protective formation. It's the same type as the one I used when I accidentally entered the ancient Skywolf's grave. It only has a concealment function. It's flawless, like it was made by nature. Any cultivator who enters a formation like this has basically entered it by accident. It's impossible for them to be discovered. Jinshin's soul was special, so he managed to distinguish the type of formation very soon. At this moment, something strange happened. The swamp around Jinshin began to churn violently. An extremely powerful senses of the soul radiated with an earth-shaking presence. It came from above and seeped down in an extremely domineering manner, extending towards the bottom of the swamp. Jinshin's face suddenly changed. Even though he had Mo Tianyan's mask, so he did not have to worry about being seen through by the powerful senses of the soul must have discovered something strange since it had been alarmed. If he was exposed before the powerful senses of the soul, there would be quite a lot of trouble. He might even face the risk of being completely exposed. Without any hesitation, Jinshin took a step forward and directly entered the concealment formation. The moment Jinshin's figure disappeared, the powerful senses of the soul followed closely behind. They descended to the very bottom of the swamp, wandering around as if they were searching for something in detail. However, Jinshin was already prepared. He did not leave behind any presence here. As a result, apart from the small pile of stone powder that he had smeared on the divine hall, there was no trace of him at all at the very bottom of the swamp. Even though the presence of the fortune divine jade had become extremely faint within the stone powder, it had not completely dissipated. Perhaps the stone powder with a small amount of the fortune divine jade's presence would not be able to conceal Jinshin at all. However, for experts other than Jinshin, as long as the presence of the fortune divine jade had not completely dissipated, their senses would not be able to detect it. As a result, the terrifying senses of the soul that made Jinshin's heart palpitate did not discover the existence of the stone powder, nor did it discover the natural concealment formation here. In the end, it returned empty-handed after wandering around the bottom of the swamp for a while. Chapter 23:37. Within the concealment formation, Jinshin was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he held his breath and concealed his presence. He carefully hid there and observed the situation at the bottom of the swamp. Under the cover of the natural concealment formation, he silently observed for a while. Only when the boiling mud at the bottom of the swamp gradually calmed down did he finally let out a sigh of relief. He knew that the owner of the powerful senses of the soul had not discovered anything. Otherwise, it would not have been as simple as the senses of the soul that had traversed space. It would have been the owner of the soul. This sense of the soul doesn't seem to have discovered the powder I left behind. If it had discovered the powder, it would have known that someone had been here. If it were me, I would definitely have searched even more carefully, or even come here personally, Jinshin thought. His eyes became brighter and brighter. He originally thought that the powder he had replaced could not escape the senses of the soul due to the loss of the presence of the fortune divine jade. After all, the powder had nowhere to hide from his senses. However, he suddenly realized that while the powder could not escape from his senses, it did not mean that it could not escape from the senses of other experts. If the layer of rock around the fortune divine jade is used properly, it will have unexpected effects. It's just a pity that I realized it too late. I've already cut through all the rock layers, so the presence of the fortune divine jade in the rock is constantly dispersing. It won't be able to last for long. Jinshin's face was filled with regret. He sighed gently and quickly collected himself. He temporarily put the matter of the fortune divine jade to the back of his mind and began to carefully observe the world within the concealment formation. All he could see was darkness. There was no light at all. It was so dark that he could not even see his own fingers. However, the darkness did not affect Jinshin at all. His eyes shone brightly like torches, directly piercing through the darkness and taking in the surroundings. What appeared before Jinshin's eyes was a long, narrow, and deep passageway that led straight to the ground. The passageway was winding and spiraling all the way down. He couldn't see the end of it at all, let alone know how deep it was. Jinshin released the senses of his soul instinctively, but to his surprise, he discovered that the entire tunnel was filled with a mysterious energy. It was a great hindrance to his soul. Even though he had fused with a strand of chaotic force, and his soul had changed drastically and gained various unbelievable abilities, he could only extend his senses to a radius of 2.5 kilometers in the tunnel. As for this passageway, he had no idea how deep it was. His divine sense spread out for 5 miles, so he naturally wouldn't discover anything. This place isn't simple at all. Perhaps there's some shocking secret hidden below. Standing in the narrow passageway, Jinshin hesitated for a moment, then began to descend, following the passageway into the depths of the earth. The underground passageway that was concealed by a naturally formed concealing formation had already piqued Jinshin's curiosity. Jinshin made his way down step by step. Along the way, he maintained a high level of vigilance and constantly observed his surroundings. As a result, he did not move very quickly. Within the passageway, shrouded in darkness, he could not sense the flow of time at all. After who knew how long, Jinshin finally reached the end of the passageway and arrived at the depths of the earth. He glanced around. His gaze pierced through the endless darkness like lightning, taking in everything in the surroundings. What appeared before him was an extremely huge cavern. He had no idea how tall and long it was. As for how deep it was, he had no idea. Even with Jinshin's current vision, he was unable to see the end of the cavern. As for the divine sense of the divine sense, it was suppressed even more. It had shrunk from the initial range of 5 kilometers to a range of 1 kilometer. He could not even see as far as the naked eye. Suddenly, Jinshin's eyes narrowed slightly. The light in his eyes flickered as he stared straight ahead. Extremely far away, he could vaguely see a huge shadow crawling on the ground. It was just too far away. With Jinshin's vision, he could only see a blurry shadow. He could not see it clearly at all. Jinshin took a step forward. He erupted with the strength of the 13th layer of the chaotic body without holding back at all. With a flash, he arrived several kilometers away, hurrying forward quickly. This place was extremely well hidden. He did not have to worry about being discovered by the peak experts on the desolate plain, so there was no need for him to continue hiding. With Jinshin's speed, he approached the huge shadow very quickly. When he saw what it was, he was completely stunned. It was actually a colossal ancient beast that was several 100,000 meters long. It lay on the ground without moving at all. It was extremely majestic, several times larger than a mountain. Jinshin was not even an ant when he stood before the ancient beast with his body that was only a few meters tall. The ancient beast had clearly died a very long time ago. It did not give off any pulses of life at all. Thick chains wrapped around the ancient beast's body. Every single chain radiated with the power of loss. They wrapped around the ancient beast's body tightly, digging deep into its flesh. The other end of the chains led to the very depths of the cavern. Jianshun became more and more stern as he studied the ancient beast's corpse and the chains wrapped around it. Although the ancient beast had died many years ago, its tremendous vital energy had yet to dry up. It was still as vast as the ocean. At this moment, the ancient beast's ocean-like vital energy was being channeled into the deepest part of the cave through the chain. Jianshun arrived before the ancient beast's corpse and slowly extended his hand to touch it. He wanted to check the situation inside. The ancient beast's corpse was warm to the touch and not cold to the touch. However, before Jianshun could examine it any further, his face suddenly changed. His body trembled violently, and he immediately pulled back his hand. He staggered backwards as if he had suffered a heavy blow. The ancient beast's corpse was just too powerful when it was still alive. Although it had died, the tremendous vital energy within it continued to circulate. Just the normal circulation of the vital energy was enough to send Jianshun flying. If it were not for the fact that his chaotic force had reached a certain level and his body was extremely tough, he probably would have been heavily injured already. So powerful, Jianshun was extremely shocked. He felt excruciating pain in his right arm, as if his bones were about to shatter. He was astounded. Even after being dead for so many years and having so much vital energy drained away, the ancient beast still possessed such terrifying might. Just how terrifying was its strength when it was still alive? Suddenly, Jianshun's eyes narrowed. He saw another blurry shadow in the distance. It was extremely huge. With a single movement, Jianshun left the place. He shot off into the distance like an arrow. Very soon, he arrived before the second huge shadow. When he saw what it was, his face was filled with shock. This was because the shadow was also a huge ancient beast. It had been dead for who knew how many years already. Thick chains wrapped around its body, piercing deep into its flesh. They constantly drained the ancient beast's vital energy and sent it to the very depths of the cavern through the chains. Chapter 23:38. What's in the depths of this cavern? It's actually using the corpses of two powerful ancient beasts to constantly provide vital energy. Jianshun thought. He could not help but look at the depths of the cavern as he became surprised and doubtful. In the end, Jianshun did not touch the two corpses recklessly. The two ancient beasts were just too powerful when they were alive. Even though they were already dead and reduced to corpses, the remaining pressure was still not something Jianshun could endure. Just the flow of vital energy within them was enough to injure some experts who had just reached the primordial realm. Afterwards, Jianshun continued to observe the huge cavern. He became even more shocked. To his surprise, he discovered that there were far more than just two ancient beast corpses in the cavern. He discovered a total of 6 colossal ancient beast corpses in different places. Without any exception, the 6 ancient beast corpses were wrapped in chains. The tremendous vital energy within them was constantly drained and transported to the depths of the cavern. The 6 ancient beast corpses were all of different sizes. They came from different races. There was a mountainous serpent dragon, while there was a winged golden dragon that was as huge as a planet. They were all extremely powerful. The pressure from the corpses seemed to be enough to crush the sky and obliterate everything. What extravagance! Who's behind all of this? Jianshun was shocked. The fact that 6 terrifying ancient beast corpses were gathered together was an extremely great shock to him. He believed that any single one of the 6 ancient beasts would be an invincible existence on the desolate plain. No one could stop them. Unfortunately, who knew how many years ago they had already been dead? He continued onwards, and very soon, he discovered a 7th corpse several tens of thousand kilometers away. This was a humanoid creature with the appearance of a young woman. Her appearance was peerless, and she was over 100 jong tall. She stood there, exuding a domineering aura of invincibility. There seemed to be an undefeatable battle intent circling around her. She looked like a female war goddess. This person was clearly not human. On his back, there was a pair of incomparably huge golden wings that cascaded down naturally. It was incomparably beautiful. Even though he couldn't sense any signs of life from her body, every single feather on her wings shone with a golden light, dazzling and eye-catching. Powerful energy fluctuations circulated around them. However, her fate was also extremely miserable. A chain extended out from the depths of the cavern, splitting into 3 strands and piercing into her dantian, heart, and forehead. The surging chi and blood in her body were also continuously sucked away through this iron chain that led straight into the depths of the cave. Jianchen was completely numb as he looked at this humanoid creature that was over 300 meters tall. He fell silent, his heart heavy. After pausing for a moment, he continued forward. Not long after, he found the 8th corpse. This corpse belonged to a human expert. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He wore a golden robe and sat cross-legged on the ground. His eyes were closed, and there was a vast righteous chi of heaven and earth surrounding him. The chain had also split into 3 strands, piercing into his dantian, heart, and forehead. This human clan expert had also been dead for many years. There was no sign of life left in him. All that was left was the vast power of chi and blood in his body. Jianchun had no idea just how powerful the human expert was when he was alive. Even though he was only a corpse now, Jianchun still shivered as he stood before him. Chills ran down his spine. Clearly, the human expert was no weaker than the 6 ancient beasts and the winged humanoid creature when he was alive. Jianchun stood 3 meters away as he stared deeply at the human expert who sat on the ground. There was a sliver of sorrow in his eyes. He knew that this human powerhouse was not an evil person. The righteous chi of heaven and earth that lingered on his body proved that he was a righteous and upright person. However, he ended up in such a miserable state. He had been reduced to a tool to provide vital energy. At that moment, Jianchun became sorrowful. However, he also knew that there was nothing he could do with his current strength. In the end, he bowed deeply to the human expert before turning around and leaving. Jianchen continued forward. He followed the chain and maintained his vigilance as he made his way to the depths of the cavern. He wanted to know just what was hidden in the depths of the cavern that required such a terrifying amount of vital energy to use the corpses of 8 experts to provide vital energy. Before long, Jianchen finally arrived at the depths of the cavern. Before him was a surging sea of blood that resembled an ocean. The terrifying vital energy shone with dazzling, blood-red light, dyeing the entire world red. Gurgling sounds constantly rang out from the sea of blood. Tremendous vital energy constantly surged in the sea of blood, erupting with extremely shocking pulses of energy. It possessed devastating power. Jinchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared straight ahead. He did not pay too much attention to the sea of blood. Instead, he focused all of his attention above the sea of blood. There, a colossal ape covered in thick and long fur hovered above the sea of blood without moving at all. This ancient ape's fur was dark golden in color. It lay there motionlessly without a head, only a huge body. It had also been dead for who knew how many years. The 8 chains intersected above the ape's corpse, vaguely forming a complicated and profound formation. It absorbed the vital energy from the 8 powerful beings outside. After being converted by the formation, it endlessly poured into the ape's body. At the same time, Jianchen sharply discovered that the residual vital energy in the sea of blood below the ape's corpse was being channeled into the ape's corpse in an extremely slow manner. It was slowly being absorbed by the ape. However, the ancient ape's body was not filled with an aura of death. Instead, it was filled with thick life force. Even though this life force was just a drop in the ocean compared to the ape's earth-shaking strength, at the very least, it meant that the ape was not completely dead. Its body still retained a certain amount of vitality. Could it be that the enormous power of chi and blood was extracted from the bodies of the 8 great experts just to create this headless ancient ape that had already died long ago? Jinchen's mind shuddered. He stared closely at the ape before him as he thought to himself, "Who is it? Who created everything here?" The light in Jinchen's eyes flickered. He could already vaguely guess that someone probably wanted to revive the ape, just to nourish the body of this ancient ape. He had already used the corpses of 8 ridiculously powerful experts. Then, how powerful was this ancient ape with dark golden fur? Jinshin took a step forward and continued to approach the ape. He wanted to get closer and observe it more carefully.